Everyone laughed when I stepped up to the altar with my offering, a crushed bag of gas station hot chips. That was all I had. Altars had been appearing in other cities for 3 weeks. Fair Lake had treated them like disaster clips, rich entertainment, and one more thing. Poor people could not afford to fear. Crown Mall was supposed to be spectacle, not history. A second earlier, the crowd had been staring at the chips in my hand like I had dragged trash into a sacred place. There. It looked worthless. The bag was half crushed, the corner was torn, and red dust was already stuck to my fingers. I had bought it because it was cheap enough to count as dinner. The rich man beside my ex lifted his black card and smiled. The altar wants value, he said. Not snacks. The altar disagreed. The stone mouth opened. I poured the chips in. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then the altar screamed. Every expensive offering around it burned black. Gold watches, diamond earrings, velvet boxes, cash. All of it turned to ash like the altar was offended. Anyone had tried to impress it with price tags. Only my offering stayed lit. Then a black window opened above the stone. Mythic reward detected. The laughing stopped so fast it felt rehearsed. That was when the rich people stopped smiling. The altar split open. Inside the red light sat a black egg the size of a football helmet, crossed with pulsing red veins. For one breath, nobody moved. Then someone whispered, "Take it from him." The whole plaza remembered how to be greedy at the same time. Then the first hand reached for it. A woman in pearls lunged first. A man in a suit shouted, "Grab it!" A security guard reached for his radio instead of his baton, which told me he was smarter than the suit. That rich man was Troy Bancroft. He took 1 step forward, then stopped when the red light crawled up his shoes. He tried to recover by doing the only thing men like him trust. He offered money. "Name a price," Troy said, loud enough for the crowd. "I'll buy it before somebody gets hurt." I looked at the black card on the pavement. "You already made your offering," I said. The altar rejected it. A few people near him heard me. That mattered. Fake authority hates witnesses more than insults. My ex, Lydia Wren, whispered, "Miles." She took half a step toward me, then looked at Troy as if asking permission to care. That tiny pause was the cleanest breakup gift she ever gave me. Even with red light on her face, she was still checking which man had the better price. She said my name differently then, not like a burden, like a door she had thrown away and suddenly wanted to check if it still opened. I shoved the egg under my hoodie and backed away from the altar. The man in the suit blocked my path. That reward came from a public altar. It belongs to whoever can protect it. I looked at the gold ash on his cuff. "Then protect your watch better." His face purpled. He reached for me anyway. The red veins on the egg pulsed once through my hoodie. The man flinched before touching me, as if something behind my ribs had opened one eye. That was enough. I slid past him and walked toward the service hallway beside the closed department store. Lydia hurried after me, heels clicking too fast on the tile. "Miles," she called, "wait, we should talk." That almost made me laugh. All the months I had waited for her to talk when my card was declined, when my apartment was empty, when my birthday gift to her cost more than my groceries, and now one red beam had made conversation urgent. Troy caught her wrist before she reached me. "Don't chase him," Troy said, but his voice had lost its shine. "Everyone saw the light. He won't get far." He said it to Lydia. He said it loud enough for me. And the worst part was that he was right. By the time I hit the service hallway, Crown Mall Plaza had turned into a trap with a roof. Phones were already pointed at every exit. People were shouting guesses. Some called me lucky, some called me a thief, some called the egg a public asset. I called them slow. I had spent 3 years as a logistics analyst for people who paid me like they were doing charity. I knew loading doors, delivery windows, camera blind spots, and which emergency exits had alarms nobody fixed because the mall owners were cheap. Old humiliation still had uses. I ducked behind a stacked row of folding tables, kicked open a side door, and dropped into the employee corridor. Behind me, a security guard shouted, "Sir, stop!" I did not stop. The egg shifted against my chest. For half a second I thought it was cracking. Instead, true sight flickered over my own hands. Secondary Mythic compatibility reward unlocked. True sight. Reads hidden altar demand, match resonance, reward grade, item effect, and limited consequence traces. Cost, attention, risk. Attention cuts both ways. Limitation, resonance is not an answer key. That last line bothered me more than the guard. The first half was tempting. I could see what altars wanted. I could see what rewards did. I could feel when trash was close to becoming a jackpot. Close was not exact. Wrong guesses could still get me killed. The second half meant something could see back. True sight cut across the egg under my hoodie. Abyss Drake Egg. Grade, Mythic. Dormant Companion Seed. Requires blood, calamity essence, and repeated feeding before hatch. Bond status, unclaimed. High exposure risk while unhatched. Great. a mythic dragon egg against my ribs, and the first thing it wanted was something I did not have: blood. A door slammed behind me. Two men had entered the corridor from the plaza. They were not filming. They were not shouting. They walked with the ugly patience of men who thought fear was a negotiation tool. One of them held a pocket knife low by his thigh. I took the next corner before they could speak and shoved through a maintenance exit into the alley behind the mall. The afternoon air smelled like fried food, exhaust, and panic. A siren wailed somewhere east of the plaza. Then every phone in the alley screamed at once. Mine lit up in my hand. Federal Anomaly Response Office, emergency notice, red light event confirmed in Central Fair Lake City. Avoid contact with unknown reward holder. Report altar violence, reward theft, or abnormal biological objects. Unknown reward holder. RO had been a quiet federal office for the strange things polite news never named. The altar era had dragged them into daylight with everyone else. That was me. Abnormal biological object. That was the egg pressed against my ribs like a second heart. The two men from the corridor burst into the alley. The pocketknife man saw me, then saw the emergency alert on his own phone. Greed changed his face faster than fear. "Hand it over," he said. "You don't know what that thing is." "No, it liked my chips better than your life choices," I said. His partner looked past me toward the street. "Police are coming. Pharaoh too. We take it now or nobody gets it." That was the first honest thing I had heard all day. The red beam had not made me safe. It had made me visible. I grabbed the metal trash can lid, hurled it into the pocketknife man's knees, and ran when he cursed and folded. I did not win that fight. I bought 3 seconds, which was all broke men ever got unless they stole more. I sprinted through the alley, vaulted a delivery chain, and cut behind a row of restaurants. Behind me, someone shouted that I had gone south. I went north. By the time I reached my apartment building, the red beam had faded from the sky, but Fair Lake City had not stopped looking up. Every lobby screen I passed replayed the same shaky clip: red light, my hoodie, Lydia standing useless beside the Maybach. The captions were already fighting. Broke man blessed. Mall thief escapes. Mystery egg stolen. None of them wrote the correct headline. Man reads rule. Rich people hate it. My hands shook when I locked my door. The egg sat on my thrift store coffee table, black shell pulsing under the cheap ceiling light. It looked ridiculous there, between a stack of overdue bills and the mug Lydia once said made my place feel depressing. I opened my phone. Lydia had called 6 times. The 7th call came while I was staring. I let it ring. Then I blocked her number and deleted the contact. Small reward, clean reward, petty enough to taste good. The egg gave one soft pulse, like it approved of spite. I leaned close and let TrueSight read the shell again. Abyss, Drake egg. Grade, mythic. Requires blood. Requires calamity essence. High exposure risk while unhatched. Outside, sirens dragged closer to Crown Mall Plaza. Helicopters moved over Fair Lake City. The federal alert repeated with a new line telling citizens not to pursue red light rewards. That was cute. The men who would listen to that warning were not the men I needed to fear. On the table, the Abyss Drake egg pulsed again, slower this time, hungry and patient. I had proved the first rule of the altar era. Gold was not value. Diamonds were not value. The right trash in the right mouth was value. Then TrueSight showed one more line over the edge of my vision. Personal offerings remaining before midnight, 2. The city was hunting the red light owner. The egg needed blood, and I had 2 more chances to become too dangerous to harvest. I did not take the main streets after the red beam. Crown Mall Plaza had become a camera nest, and every siren in Fair Lake City sounded like it knew my apartment number. I killed the lights, shoved a chair under my door handle, and stood over the Abyss Drake egg while TrueSight burned one practical insult into my vision. Personal offerings remaining before midnight, 2. Great. The world had turned into a god casino, and I was on a countdown with a hungry egg and no instruction manual. The first stupid move would have been staying home. The second stupid move would have been using the 2 offerings in public. I chose a third kind of stupid and went out through the fire stairs with the egg wrapped in a laundry bag under my arm. The streets around my building were not empty. They were worse than empty. People hid behind curtains, watched doorways, and filmed every stranger carrying anything bigger than a lunchbox. One man across the street stared at my laundry bag too long, so I smiled at him. He looked away. Fear was already learning manners. I needed rewards that solved immediate problems. The egg was too visible. My body was too weak. My apartment was a shoebox with a deadbolt my landlord could open with a key and a bored expression. TrueSight did not give me a map with arrows. It gave me pressure, appetite, and match quality when I stood close enough to an altar. So I moved through alleys and closed storefronts, checking every pale glow from a distance, refusing anything that smelled like a guess. Wrong offerings did not just fail. I had seen one clip before leaving home, a shaking video of a man offering a hunting knife to an altar that wanted mercy. The altar had opened like a throat and something with too many arms had dragged him behind it. I watched 3 seconds, learned the lesson, and closed the video. No research spiral, exact matches only, and true sight only gave me the scent. I still had to choose the bait. The first usable altar waited inside a shuttered photo booth near a dead food court entrance. Its stone surface looked like a tiny stage with 4 burnt curtains. Nobody else had bothered with it because the offering slot was narrow and the reward glow inside was almost gone. True sight peeled the lie open. Hidden demand, burn a betrayal you still pretend does not hurt. Reward, hard control memory item. Strongest nearby resonance, personal image tied to romantic severance. Lydia, again, she was getting expensive even after I blocked her. The last physical piece of her in my wallet was a photo strip from the year I still believed effort could make someone loyal. 4 tiny pictures, her cheek against mine, her hand flashing the bracelet I had put on a credit card. My smile, tired and stupid. I held the strip over the altar. For a second, I hated that my hand hesitated. Then my phone buzzed with another blocked call notice. That fixed it. I lit the photo with a cheap lighter and dropped it into the slot. The stage altar inhaled the flame. The photo did not burn normally. Lydia's face blackened first. Mine stayed pale until the last second, then curled into ash and vanished. A narrow blue light snapped out. 3 paper tickets slid from the altar, old theater stubs with scorched edges and blank backs. TrueSight labeled them before I touched them. 4th Act stub. Grade, epic. Effect, force one target within striking range to relive the emotional collapse they fear most for 3 seconds. Single use per stub. 3 seconds, most people would call that short. People who had been attacked knew 3 seconds was a fortune. I pocketed the 3 4th Act stubs and left before the altar attracted another desperate gambler. 1 offering down, 1 real tool gained, 1 wound converted into ammunition. Personal offerings remaining before midnight. 1. Petty? Yes. Useful? Even better. The second altar took longer because I refused 3 tempting traps. A watch altar wanted the first breath of a newborn. A silver bowl wanted teeth from a living father. A cracked mirror wanted a face admired by more than 1,000 people. Fair Lake City had become honest about how ugly desire could be. Near midnight, I found the right altar in the basement of a closed used bookstore. The store gate had been twisted open by someone stronger than me, but whoever broke in had left after seeing dusty paperbacks instead of jewelry. Rich people never looked twice at cheap shelves. The altar sat between 2 collapsed bookcases, a smooth black cube with a mouth like a keyhole. Around it lay failed offerings, coins, rings, a broken tablet, a stack of cash still smoking at the edges. True sight sharpened. Hidden demand, a container of nothing that can still carry everything. Reward, private storage space. Strongest nearby resonance, empty container with meaning people pretended to understand. I almost laughed. On the bottom shelf beside my shoe sat a thick philosophy book nobody had bought for years. The cover was water-stained, the spine looked bitten. It was exactly the kind of book people praised in college and never finished. I picked it up, flicked 1 page, and saw a sentence about emptiness being the only honest vessel. Good enough, I told the altar. A noise came from upstairs. 1 floorboard creaked. I froze. Someone else was inside the store. The altar's keyhole mouth pulsed once, impatient. Specific question. Specific risk. Offer now and maybe draw attention. Run now and waste my last chance before midnight. I shoved the philosophy book into the keyhole. The altar folded the book without tearing it. Pages vanished into darkness, 1 sheet at a time. The basement went silent, so silent I could hear whoever stood upstairs stop moving. Then gold light burst through the floorboards. Not red, not mythic, still loud enough to kill my anonymity. A black cube dropped into my palm, smaller than a dice box, cold enough to burn. True sight named it. Pocket vault. Grade, legendary. Effect, private dimensional storage bound to owner. Living beings restricted unless bonded or dormant. The abyss. Drake egg pulsed under my laundry bag as if insulted by the word dormant. I touched the cube to the egg. The egg disappeared. My arms finally went empty. A space opened in my awareness, dark and precise, holding the egg where no landlord, thief, camera, or greedy ex could reach it. I added the 2 unused 4th Act stubs, the lighter, and the hot chip wrapper because I was sentimental about profitable garbage. Personal offerings remaining before midnight, 0. Then the man upstairs came down. He did not hurry. That was the first warning. He wore a rain jacket though. The night was dry, gloves though the basement was warm, and a hardware store hatchet hung loose in his right hand. His eyes went straight to my empty hands, then to the gold light still leaking from the altar. A cracked ring on his thumb gave 1 dull brown pulse. The shelf beside him bent inward, not from his hand touching it, but from pressure rolling off him. He was not guessing at violence. He had already bought some. Red light at the plaza, the man said. Gold light here. You're either lucky or stupid. I stepped away from the altar. People keep offering me those options. He smiled. Hand over the cube, kid. Whatever else you pulled today too, you saw me put it somewhere. I saw enough. The hunter came down the last step and swung the hatchet at my knee. No speech, no negotiation. Good. Clean predators wasted less time. I threw myself sideways, hit a bookcase, and pain flashed through my shoulder. The hatchet chewed into the shelf where my leg had been. He ripped it free and came again, faster than a normal man should have moved. The ring on his thumb pulsed. His shoulder blurred. He already had rewards. That thought saved me because it killed my pride. I was not fighting a mugger. I was fighting the first person who understood the new economy better than the crowd did. He kicked a bookcase with his heel, and the whole shelf shot toward me like it had been shoved by a truck. I dropped flat. Rotten paper burst over my head, the basement filled with dust and the ugly sweetness of old glue. The hunter laughed once. You don't even know how to bind what you steal. That told me he had killed before. It also told me he thought teaching me was safe. The second swing came at my face. I pulled one fourth act stub from the pocket vault by instinct more than skill. It slapped into my palm like it had always been there. The hunter's eyes widened. I pressed the stub to his wrist as the hatchet dropped. The ticket burned blue. The hunter stopped breathing. His face broke open without a wound. Not blood. Memory. His pupils went wide and his mouth shaped a name I did not know. His whole body locked in place, trapped somewhere inside his own worst collapse. 3 seconds. I used the first second to grab the hatchet handle, the second to rip it from his hand, the third to drive the blade into his throat. He came back right as he died. The sound he made stayed with me longer than I wanted. I stumbled back, hit the altar, and vomited between 2 boxes of old romance novels. That was my moral essay. It lasted about 10 seconds. Then the dead man's coat split with light. 3 small orbs rolled from his body and stopped at my shoes. A cracked bronze charm, the dull ring from his thumb, a paper-thin blade that smelled like rust. True sight pulsed over them. Unbound altar rewards, owner dead, claim available, kill and claim condition confirmed. I stared at the corpse. Then I stared at the rewards. The hunter had not come because he was insane. He had come because murder paid now. I put the dropped items into the pocket vault with hands that would not stop shaking. The storage space accepted them silently. No ceremony, no judgment, just inventory. The dull ring tried to crawl toward my wrist until the pocket vault swallowed it. That little movement made the rule uglier. Rewards did not care who earned them. They cared who held them after the previous owner stopped breathing. That made it worse. Upstairs, thunder rolled. I looked toward the stairwell. Gray rain began falling outside the broken storefront, hard and sudden, though the sky had been clear minutes earlier. Water slid under the door, touched the basement steps, and hissed. The altar dimmed. The dead hunter's blood thinned as if the floor were drinking it. I backed up. The gray rain reached the corpse. Skin, coat, hatchet wound, even the vomit beside the book boxes faded like bad video. The body did not dissolve. It was edited out. 1 blink there, 1 blink gone. The basement altar vanished next, leaving only dust and a circle of dry concrete where it had been. I did not understand the rain yet. At the time, I thought it only erased evidence. Only. That word would become funny later. For that night, it was enough. The rain had removed the corpse, the blood, the altar, and the proof that I had killed a man under a bookstore. It had also removed the lie that the altar era was a lottery. It was a food chain. People with rewards could be harvested. The rain cleaned the table afterward. I waited until the gray water stopped hissing, then climbed out through the back door with empty hands and a full pocket vault. The street smelled washed and wrong. No police tape, no federal trucks, no crowd, no corpse. Just me. 2 remaining 4th act stubs, a legendary storage space, 3 stolen rewards, and a mythic egg hidden where nobody could frisk it away. It should have made me feel untouchable. Instead, every dark window looked like an eye. If kill and claim was real, then the strongest people in Fair Lake City had every reason to stay quiet, hunt privately, and let fools keep posting happy altar videos. By dawn, I needed walls no landlord could open. I needed blood no grocery bag could provide. And I needed a place where the next body could disappear before someone else claimed my loot. By sunrise, the gray rain had washed the reward hunter out of the world, but it had not solved the egg's hunger. I tried the sane option first, a sealed bucket of butcher blood. Cash at a back door. No questions, because Fair Lake City had already become the kind of place where no questions cost extra. The abyss Drake egg sat inside the pocket vault until I pulled it out over my bathtub. Black shell, red veins, patient appetite. I poured the blood into a plastic basin. The egg pulsed once, then it went still. True sight gave me the bad news like a slap. Hatching requirement unmet. Ordinary blood, low value. Required scale, sustained supply, required quality, calamity essence, or altar touched vitality. I stared at the bucket. Of course you're a picky eater, I said. The egg did not answer. It only warmed against my palm like a spoiled rich kid waiting for the real meal. That was the problem with Mythic rewards. They did not care that I was broke. They cared that I kept feeding them. The gray rain had taught me another lesson too. My apartment was not a base. It was a box with neighbors, cameras, maintenance keys, and a bathtub full of evidence if the rain did not arrive on schedule. I needed blood. I needed privacy. I needed a place ugly enough that nobody looked twice at drains. Fair Lake City handed me the answer before noon because panic makes people cheap. My old supervisor texted while I was washing blood off my tub. 3 missed messages, all about why I had not logged in for a shift nobody would remember if I died. I typed, I found a better position. Then I blocked that number too. Small career move. Huge morale boost. Every street had a new kind of business corpse. Restaurants were closed because cooks had run off to gamble offerings. Delivery trucks sat abandoned because drivers were chasing altars. Store owners who had laughed at emergency planning were suddenly begging for private security, generators, and cash. And food businesses were bleeding fastest. I heard the first useful argument outside a supply office where 3 owners were yelling over a locked door. One man in a stained jacket kept saying Northcutt Meats could not hold another week. The workers were gone. The inspectors were not coming. The freezers were failing. Buyers had vanished because nobody wanted to own a meat plant while Fair Lake's first red light collapse chewed through the city. Nobody except me. The man in the stained jacket saw me watching and snapped, "Unless you're here to buy a disaster, walk away." Said, "How much for keys today?" He blinked. People who are drowning never expect the quiet man on the curb to ask for the anchor. He tried to recover with pride. This place used to clear 6 figures a month. Used to, I said. Now your freezers are warming, your workers are gone, and every hour you own Northcutt Meats makes you poorer. His jaw tightened because panic sellers hate accurate math. He named a number that would have been insulting last week and desperate that morning. The reward hunter's wallet and 1 low-grade trinket sold for fast cash-covered emergency control. This was not clean ownership. It was keys now, money now, and a problem too ugly for anyone else to steal before sunrise. I wanted access. He wanted escape. That made us honest. The seller pushed a ring of keys across the hood of his truck and pointed at the road leading out of the industrial strip. "Northcutt Meats is yours to ruin tonight," he said. I picked up the keys. Too late. That's why it was affordable. His mouth twisted. He wanted to insult me. Then his phone lit up with another altar alert, and he remembered he had already sold me the problem. 10 minutes later, I stood inside Northcutt Meats, breathing cold blood and old bleach. The plant was not impressive in the way rich people liked. No marble, no glass wall, no front desk smiling at investors. Just concrete floors, steel hooks, drains, freezer doors, cutting tables, and the kind of silence that made every drip sound guilty. A night shift cutter was loading a crate into his car when I arrived. He saw the new keys in my hand and said, "Owner told me payroll's dead, I'm taking what I'm owed." I looked at the crate. Old knives, spare hooks, 2 boxes of gloves, useful but not worth a fight before I knew the building. "Take the gloves," I said. "Leave the steel." He stared at me like he might argue. Then a federal alert screamed from his phone, and whatever courage he had borrowed left with the ringtone. He dumped the hooks on the pavement and drove away with the gloves. Good. First problem removed without noise. Perfect. The first reward was simple logistics. Space, locks, trucks, freezers, drains. A property ugly enough that nobody would call it glamorous, valuable enough that everybody would need it once hunger got louder than pride. The second reward waited under the kill floor. I found it because True Sight flickered every time I crossed the central drain. Not a full label, not at first. Just a red pulse under the concrete, like the building had a heartbeat. It had been hiding from every owner before me. I followed the pulse to a rusted freezer door behind hanging plastic strips. The seller had claimed that door led to dead storage. He had been half right. Behind it was a narrow stairwell that should not have fit inside the building. The air below smelled older than meat. Wet iron! Burnt sugar! Grave dirt! I pulled the hatchet from the pocket vault and went down. At the bottom sat an altar made of black-red stone, shaped like a crown forced into the floor. It had no public glow, no countdown crowd, no greedy hands piled around it. Thin red lines ran from the room's drains into its base, and every line beat slowly, waiting. True Sight opened so hard my eyes watered. Blood Crown Altar. Grade, permanent private altar. Function, converts discarded altar rewards into core blood. Limit, exempt from daily public offering count. Cost, refuses clean wealth. Feeds only on ugly leftovers. Preferred offering, unwanted rewards touched by death, fear, or failed desire. Public altars gave people 3 chances and then forced them back into the street. This thing sat under my floor and waited as long as I could feed it. That was not a reward, that was infrastructure. I read the lines twice. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, because the seller thought he had dumped a failing meat plant on a desperate idiot and he had handed me a private god machine under a slaughterhouse. Crown Mall Plaza had given me 1 mythic egg. Northcutt Meats gave me a way to grow every day without begging the public altars for permission. That was better than luxury. Luxury wanted witnesses. Power wanted a basement. I pulled the cracked bronze charm from the pocket vault. It was one of the reward hunter's leftovers. True Sight called it weak, temporary, and merely useless. The kind of trash a stronger hunter would throw away after looting a corpse. Exactly what the Blood Crown altar wanted. The crown-shaped altar opened without a sound. I dropped the charm in. Red teeth of light closed around it. The charm screamed like a mosquito in a flame. A glass bottle rose from the center of the altar, stoppered with black wax, filled with liquid so dark red it looked almost alive. Core blood, grade, body resource. Effect, permanent strengthening, accelerated recovery, vitality increase. Warning, pain proportional to weakness. I looked at the warning. Then I looked at my hands, still scratched from the bookstore fight and still not strong enough to survive a second hunter without cheating. Fine, I said. Hurt me. I drank the bottle. The core blood hit my stomach like a furnace dropped down an elevator shaft. I did not fall gracefully. I hit the stone floor on one knee, bit my tongue, and tasted my own blood while every bone in my body tried to become a weapon at the same time. Heat crawled through my muscles. Old exhaustion burned off. The bruises from the hunter's shove tightened, flared, and vanished. For a few seconds, I hated the altar. Then I stood up. The hatchet in my hand felt lighter. The air felt slower. My heartbeat sounded too calm for what had just happened. I wrapped one hand around a hanging steel chain and pulled. The links groaned out of the ceiling bracket before I felt strain in my shoulder. Yesterday, that chain would have owned me. That morning, it became another object, learning manners in my own building. I dragged the blade across my palm. A shallow line opened, bright and red. Before I could curse, the cut squeezed itself shut, leaving only a warm itch and a smear of blood. Healing. Strength. Recovery. Not temporary. Mine. A hanging side of beef waited in the kill room upstairs, thick as a grown man and hooked through the spine. I walked to it because I needed proof that did not come from a glowing label. The seller had followed me back inside by then. He stood near the office door, pretending he had forgotten paperwork, really checking whether I had run screaming from the smell. He saw me square up to the hanging beef. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Inventory," I said. I punched it. The beef tore off the hook, flew across the room, slammed into a steel door, and left a red smear shaped like a bad decision. The seller's face went white. He looked at the broken hook, then at my hand, then at the keys he had given me. "I'm not asking," he said. "Smart," I told him. He backed out of Northcutt Meats and did not ask for the keys back. That reaction was worth almost as much as the strength. The first person to see the new me chose silence without being threatened. Fear could be crude, but it was still a kind of security system. At the office door, the seller swallowed and held up one last form with shaking fingers. "Signature for emergency control." I signed where he pointed. No speech, no celebration. The paper was boring. The keys in my pocket were not. He left faster after that. I cleaned the visible mess, locked the office, and carried the Abyss Drake egg into the basement. The egg pulsed harder near the Blood Crown altar. The veins on its shell brightened, hungry enough to make the room feel crowded. I poured the bucket of ordinary blood into one of the drain channels. The altar drank it. The egg absorbed a little of the warmth and gave a small, irritated pulse. True Sight remained rude. Progress, negligible. I pointed at the shell. "You and I need to discuss budget." The egg answered by rolling half an inch toward the altar like it owned the building. Maybe it did. Northcutt Meats had become 3 things in one morning: a failed business, a private altar room, and a dragon nursery with drains. That was a real win. It was also a bigger appetite. A single junk charm had made 1 bottle of core blood. 1 bottle had turned my body from prey into something that could break a steel hook. That meant every discarded reward in Fair Lake City was not garbage anymore. It was blood, strength, healing, time. People outside would keep chasing red beams and bragging about rare items. I needed the things they threw away. The problem was scale. I had Northcutt Meats, the Blood Crown altar, 1 mythic egg, 2 fourth-act stubs, the pocket vault, a handful of weak rewards, and a body that had finally stopped feeling underpaid. I did not have a supply chain. I did not have enough blood. I did not have a way to buy unwanted rewards without putting my face in front of every hunter, federal agent, and altar addict in Fair Lake City. Above the plant, my phone buzzed with a fresh public alert. More altars had activated before the next reset. The city was telling citizens to report abnormal lights, reward theft, and unauthorized slaughter of altar creatures. Unauthorized. That word made me smile. The old world was already trying to write permits for a game it did not understand. Down in my basement, the Blood Crown altar opened its red teeth again, waiting for the next piece of trash. The Abyss Drake egg pulsed beside it, waiting for real blood. And somewhere beyond Northcutt Meats, rich gamblers, frightened workers, desperate parents, and quiet predators were all about to create the exact garbage I needed to become worse than lucky. The next morning, I woke up under Northcutt Meats with one problem that smelled worse than the kill floor. One junk charm had become one bottle of core blood. One bottle had made me strong enough to punch hanging beef off a steel hook. And then the Blood Crown altar opened its red teeth again like a spoiled king asking for breakfast. I had a private god machine under my floor, a mythic egg sulking beside it, and no steady trash to feed either one. That was the real supply problem. Blood was easy to find in a meat plant. Altar-touched blood was not. Dead hunters were not a business model unless I wanted every night to end with a body and a prayer that Gray Rain showed up on time. I needed repeatable fuel. So when the morning altar refresh hit Fair Lake City, I left Northcutt with my hood up, the pocket vault loaded, and my new body humming like a stolen engine. The city looked different after one night of miracles and murder. Yesterday, people crowded around altars like tourists at a street show. That morning, they stood farther back. Rich gamblers still brought watches and velvet boxes, but now they brought private security too. The poor brought grocery bags, family photos, half-broken tools, and the desperate look of people who had finally realized money was only one possible language. True sight turned every altar into a locked mouth. Most mouths were not worth feeding. One altar wanted the last tooth from a living liar. Pass. One wanted the first breath stolen from a hospital room. Hard pass. One wanted a wedding ring thrown away before the divorce papers were filed, and I almost laughed because Lydia would have loved the drama if she could profit from it. I kept moving. 2 rejected altars were enough. Browsing was how fools got eaten while calling it research. The first real answer came as a scream 2 blocks ahead. Not human. Too wet, too low, too hungry. People ran from an intersection near a grocery warehouse while a creature crawled over the roof of a delivery truck. It looked like raw meat had learned anger. Strips of muscle dragged behind it. Its mouth opened sideways, and every time someone threw meat at it from the loading dock, the creature shrieked harder, as if meat itself offended it. A meat-hating calamity. Of course the universe had jokes. I stopped at the edge of the crowd, not because I wanted to help. I stopped because 3 black federal trucks hit the curb at the same time, and the doors opened before the tires stopped smoking. Faro had arrived. The Federal Anomaly Response Office did not move like mall security. No shouting for citizens to calm down. No one asked the monster to cooperate. Shield carriers went first. 2 responders pinned the creature's arms with hooked cables. A third fired a white flare into its mouth. When the calamity reared back, a woman in a gray field jacket stepped through the spray of black blood and cut its head off with a blade of compressed light. They had been built for small nightmares before the public knew what to call them. Now they were trying to fight a citywide hunger with teams meant for alleys. The crowd cheered like they had just watched a sports highlight. I did not cheer. I counted. 5 responders, 4 tools, 2 distractions, 1 finisher. They were not stronger than mythic luck. They were stronger than lone idiots. That bothered me. My core blood body could break hooks and heal cuts. It could not make me 5 trained people with coordinated gear. If a team like that found my basement, I was not fighting one reward hunter in a used bookstore anymore. The woman in the gray jacket wiped black blood off her cheek with the back of her glove. A name strip on her chest read Agent Ivy Dalton. She looked across the crowd, not at everyone, at me. The cheers around me blurred down to breath and shoe noise. Agent Ivy Dalton tilted her head slightly, like she had heard a note nobody else could hear. One responder beside her asked, "Agent Dalton?" She did not take her eyes off the crowd. "There is another signal here." That line hit harder than the monster. I had not used an altar in front of her. I had not opened the pocket vault. The Abyss Drake egg was hidden. The Blood Crown altar was under concrete across town. And still she had almost smelled the wrongness on me. I stepped behind a panicked man with a grocery basket, let him block her line of sight, and walked away at ordinary speed. Running was confession. Staring back was ego. I had enough problems without flirting with federal attention. Behind me, Agent Ivy Dalton ordered the crowd back from the dead calamity. I kept my hands in my pockets and smiled at the ground. Official teams had coordination. I needed control. The altar that gave me the first half of the answer sat outside a closed charity store, half buried under winter coats people had dumped during the panic. It was small, narrow, and ugly, shaped like an old street match stand with frozen stone hands carved around the offering slot. Nobody else cared because its surface glow was thin and blue-white, weak looking, my favorite kind. True sight opened, hidden demand, a flame given to the cold without bargaining, human value, irrelevant, match resonance, warmth without sale, flame touched by severance, reward trace, daily hope fuel. I pulled out the same cheap lighter I had used on Lydia's photo strip. The lighter had cost less than a fast food meal. It had burned a fake relationship into a fourth act stub. Now it was about to become something useful again. A woman nearby saw me holding it and said, "Honey, people are offering jewelry. That thing won't even get you a white glow." "Good," I said. "White glow is embarrassing." She moved away from me like poverty was contagious. I flicked the lighter once and held the flame to the frozen stone hands. The altar did not roar. It sighed. The carved hands closed around the flame gently, like it was the first warm thing they had touched in years. Blue-white light sank into the stone, then came back gold. A matchbox slid out. Plain cardboard, scuffed corners. A faded sun stamped on the front. True Sight labeled it before the crowd could decide whether to laugh. Hope matchbox. Grade, epic. Effect, produces 5 hope matches daily. Each match carries clean despair to hope residue. Safe as offering fuel. The woman who had mocked the lighter stared at the gold glow. "For a lighter?" she whispered. I picked up the box. "No, for paying attention." I left before anyone could ask what it did. The Hope matchbox felt light in my palm all the way back to Northcutt, but the Blood Crown altar reacted before I even reached the last basement step. Red lines brightened along the floor. The crown-shaped mouth opened wide. It knew food when it smelled it. I struck the first Hope match. The flame was tiny, the feeling inside it was not. For 1 second I heard every pathetic little bargain people make with life. One more paycheck, one more day, one more chance not to be discarded. Then the Blood Crown altar swallowed the match and turned the sound into red liquid. A glass bottle rose from the altar. Core blood, not a weak drop, a full safe bottle. I struck the second match. Another bottle. Third, fourth, fifth. By the time the last flame disappeared, 5 bottles of core blood stood in a row on the stone, dark red and stoppered with black wax. The matchbox rattled empty. Next refresh, dawn. I looked at the Hope matchbox. Then I looked at the Blood Crown altar. "You greedy little masterpiece," I said. The weak-looking matchbox had become 5 daily bottles of permanent growth. Rich gamblers were still fighting over red beams in public while I had just found passive income in a basement that smelled like old blood. That was the kind of disrespect I respected. I drank 1 bottle. Pain hit, but less than before. My body knew the route now. Heat poured through my ribs, shoulders, hands, and spine. The bruises left by the bookstore fight vanished completely. My lungs opened wider. The room sharpened. I stored 3 bottles in the pocket vault and set one beside the abyss drake egg. The egg pulsed once, tasted the bottle through the shell somehow, and gave me the supernatural equivalent of a bored blink. "Not good enough?" I asked. It rolled half an inch away from the bottle. Fine, the dragon wanted better blood. I wanted better manners. Neither of us was getting everything that morning. The Hope matchbox solved the body growth problem, not the hatching problem. I still needed combat control. Agent Ivy Dalton had almost sensed me while a dead calamity was cooling on asphalt. The next professional might not only sense me, the next one might swing. The answer waited in the 1 box I had taken from my apartment before abandoning it. Not money, not weapons. My father's old desk calendar. Daniel Keaton had marked everything in blocky black pen. Paydays, rent due dates, Thanksgiving, my mother Angela's birthday, my old school appointments, the day he planned to fix my bike, and the day he never came home to do it. I did not keep the calendar because it was valuable. I kept it because grief makes cowards of objects. You keep the paper so you do not have to admit the person is gone. That was the only reflection I allowed myself before turning it into fuel. The time altar was inside a dead watch kiosk near the transit station. Tiny stone clock hands circled its surface, stopping and jerking forward like an anxious heartbeat. True Sight read it cleanly. Hidden demand, a year honestly lost, marked by someone who tried to hold a family together. Reward, judgment time awareness, strongest carried resonance, marked time lost to family duty. The altar did not want a luxury watch. It wanted proof that time had already taken something. I placed the calendar on the stone. For a second, my fingers would not let go. Then I heard Troy's voice in memory telling me the altar wanted value. That helped. I let go. The calendar pages flipped by themselves. Rent, paycheck, birthday, hospital bill, Thanksgiving, missed dinner. The page with my father's last mark burned last, and the ash rose into a tight ring of gold. A pocket watch dropped into my hand. It was heavier than it looked, black metal with a red second hand that did not tick until my pulse matched it. True Sight flashed. Fate watch. Grade, legendary. Effect reads immediate action rhythm, danger angle, and consequence timing. Requires body speed to obey what it shows, not future sight. Better. Future sight tells weak men how they are about to die. Fate Watch gave my stronger body a chance to move correctly. The proof came before I reached the street. 3 desperate men had followed me into the dead kiosk. I saw them in the glass reflection when the red second hand snapped forward half a beat before they did. One man raised a pipe at the back of my head. Fate Watch showed the angle. My body moved. The pipe cut the air where my skull had been. I turned under his arm, drove my elbow into his ribs, and took the pipe before his mouth opened. The second man lunged with a box cutter. Fate Watch showed me his wrist, not the blade. I hit the wrist. The cutter clattered. The third man saw the first 2 fold and made the smartest choice of his life. He ran. I did not chase him. I had no reward for wasting breath on rats. The man with the broken wrist gasped, "What are you?" I crouched, took the cheap green charm from his pocket, and let True Sight read it. Low-grade heat charm. Temporary. Nearly spent. Trash. Beautiful trash. Recycling, I said. I left them alive because corpses attracted attention before rain, and because the Blood Crown altar did not need murder to make breakfast anymore. Back at Northcutt, the green charm became half a bottle of core blood. Not impressive. Still profit. By sunset, my inventory had changed shape. Hope matchbox empty until dawn, then 5 more chances. Blood Crown output, 5 safe bottles from Hope, scraps when I earn scraps. Fate Watch for combat rhythm. 1 more wheat charm converted. 1 federal agent who had almost sensed me. That last item mattered most. The major payoff had landed, and the consequence arrived fast. My phone lit up with a shaky clip from the morning monster scene. Agent Ivy Dalton stood over the beheaded Calamity, turning away from the cheering crowd to stare directly toward the place where I had been. The caption said, "Pharaoh Energy Agent notices second anomaly near grocery attack." I deleted the clip. Deleting it did not delete her eyes. Then a black flare rose beyond the rail line. West Rail District. Gunshots followed. Then a scream. Then a pink glow that pulsed through the rainy dusk like a bad invitation. The Blood Crown altar had given me daily growth. Fate Watch had given me control. Now the city wanted me to test both against people who did not run after 1 broken wrist. I followed the noise into West Rail District because a smart man avoids gunfire and a greedy man asks what everyone is shooting over. By then, I had stopped pretending I was only one of those things. The district used to be warehouses, rail spurs, empty lots, and old loading yards. After the altars fell, it became the kind of place where desperate people came at night and criminals arrived 5 minutes earlier. The pink glow came from a fenced yard behind a collapsed freight depot. Men in black bands had already surrounded it. Nightfall Syndicate. I knew the name because criminals were not subtle when they wanted civilians afraid. Someone had spray-painted the words on the gate in silver paint, and 2 men were laughing beneath it while a third dragged a wounded rival across gravel. At the center of the yard stood a pink altar shaped like a throne made from folded hands. The glow around it was soft, warm, and completely wrong for the blood on the ground. Near the altar, a woman in a black coat stood with 1 hand pressed to her side. One of the thugs pointed a pistol at her and said, "Mara Sable, commander or not, you do not get the altar alone." That answered 3 questions at once. Her name, her status, and the fact that Nightfall Syndicate solved promotion disputes with guns. Mara Sable smiled at the men around her. Not warmly, more like a knife remembering it was still sharp. "You brought rivals into my yard," Mara said, "and every man close enough heard her, so I brought something hungry." She cut her palm on a broken rail spike and threw her blood at the blackened offering slot beside the pink altar. True Sight caught 1 line before the slot closed. Wrong altar. Wrong blood. Calamity release accepted. I had just enough time to step behind a rusted loader. The ground split. Something black climbed out on 6 arms and no face, all wet ribs and hooked fingers. It hit the first Nightfall thug before he finished swearing. The man folded backward with a sound like snapped plywood. The rival gang opened fire. The Calamity ate bullets like seasoning. Then it ate the rival gang. Mara did not run. She watched her own people die with the calm of a woman counting expenses. That was the moment I stopped wondering whether she was a victim. She had released the thing knowing it would kill everyone near it. Her men, their rivals, strangers, anyone slow enough to become a wall between her and the altar? One of her own thugs crawled toward her with his leg bent the wrong way. "Boss," he choked, "help me." Mara looked down at him. For a second, I thought she might at least kick him out of the Calamity's path. Instead, she grabbed the back of his collar, sliced his palm open with a small black knife, and smeared his blood across the gravel in a curved line. The Calamity turned toward that blood immediately. The wounded thug understood before it reached him. "Mara, no!" he said. She let him go. The Calamity dragged him screaming into the dark under its ribs. Mara used the time to step closer to the pink altar. That was the kind of villain I liked dealing with early. No speeches about loyalty, no fake sisterhood, just a predator in a nice coat teaching everyone exactly what she was. I hated waste, I respected efficiency, and I wanted the altar. Fate Watch clicked inside my head before I moved. The red second hand showed the Calamity's reach, Mara's pistol angle, the gap between two fallen crates, and the 3 steps where I could cross without being turned into meat confetti. I crossed. Mara saw me halfway through. Her eyes narrowed, not scared yet. Interested. "Wrong yard," she called. "Wrong monster," I said. The Calamity swung one hooked arm toward me. Fate Watch showed the elbow before the claw. I ducked under the strike, drove the stolen pipe from the kiosk into its joint, and felt black muscle tear. It screamed. Good. If it screamed, it could suffer. Mara fired at my back. Fate Watch snapped the bullet line across my vision. I twisted. The shot cut my sleeve instead of my spine. I turned and looked at her. That was the first time Mara's smile changed. Not fear. Calculation. "Who are you?" she asked. "Busy." I kicked a fallen pistol under the loader where nobody could grab it and rushed her. Mara moved like someone who had survived better ambushes than mine. She threw a knife low at my thigh, then followed with the pistol aimed at my face. Fate Watch gave me both angles, but my body could not fully obey both at once. The knife opened my leg. Core blood burned the cut half shut before my foot hit the ground again. Mara saw that. Her calculation turned colder. I caught her wrist before she fired the second shot and slammed her arm against the altar's stone base. Bone cracked. The gun fell. For one clean second, I had her. Then her body burst into blood mist. Not smoke, not a trick of the rain. Blood. It sprayed through my fingers, hot and fine, then gathered 10 yards away behind the broken freight car. Mara reformed on one knee, pale now, her broken wrist hanging wrong. True sight flickered too late to stop it. Temporary escape art. Blood medium. Heavy cost. Mara looked at me from across the yard. Fear showed in her face. She did not beg. She did not threaten. She did something more annoying. She escaped. The blood mist ripped backward through a drainage grate and vanished under the rail line. I could have chased. The Calamity chose that moment to grab my shoulder. Bad timing for me. Worse timing for it. Its claws punched through my jacket and found skin. Core blood sealed the first tear, but the second went deeper. Pain flashed white down my arm. Fate Watch showed me 3 clean exits, and every one of them left the egg's dinner behind. I picked the ugly 4th option. I stepped into the grip instead of away from it and jammed my thumb into a soft seam under the creature's wrist. It was not a vital point, it was a question. The Calamity answered by loosening one claw. Enough. I jammed the pipe through one of its arm joints and let Fate Watch show the rhythm of its weight. It pulled. I stepped with it instead of against it, ripped the pipe sideways, and tore the joint open. Black blood splashed across my chest. The abyss strake egg pulsed inside the pocket vault. Hard. Hungry. Fine, I said. Dinner first. I dropped the egg onto the gravel in its obsidian shell, just as the Calamity lunged again. The egg did not hatch. It drank. Every line of black blood on the ground twisted toward it. Blood from the Calamity. Blood from Nightfall thugs, blood from rivals. Blood from Mara's escape trail, what little of it had not burned away. The shell veins brightened. The Calamity froze for half a second, offended that something smaller had become the center of appetite. I used that half second to climb onto the loader, jump down with both hands around the pipe, and drive it through the smooth blank place where its face should have been. The pipe broke. The Calamity did too. It collapsed into wet black ribbons that crawled toward the egg instead of away from it. The shell drank until the yard smelled less like blood and more like hot iron. True sight flashed over the egg. Hatching progress, meaningful increase. Calamity blood accepted. Trait absorption incomplete. The egg gave a pleased pulse. "Do not get smug," I told it. "You still look like a cursed football." The pink altar brightened behind me. Right. The actual prize. Most of the men in the yard were dead, running or pretending very hard to be dead. The ones still breathing watched me with the kind of attention people reserve for fires, loaded guns, and unpaid debt collectors. One Nightfall thug crawled backward on his elbows and said, "Mara will remember your face." I looked down at him. "She can remember the part where she ran." His mouth closed. Reaction with value. Fear saved time. I stepped to the pink altar and let True Sight read it. Hidden demand, sensation strong enough to wake a bored pleasure queen. Human value, jewelry, cash, and flattery rejected. Best match nearby. Extra strength menthol rub, burning cold, body shock. Reward trace, wish avatar. I stared at the text. Then I stared at the first aid pouch I had taken from Northcutt. Inside was a jar of extra-strength menthol rub used by workers who lifted too much meat and lied about their backs. It smelled like winter violence and bad decisions. I laughed once, not because I was mature, because the altar era had just asked me to seduce a pleasure queen with muscle rub. I opened the jar. The wounded Nightfall thug whispered, "Is he serious?" "Very," I said. I scooped out a thick shine of menthol rub and slapped it into the altar's offering bowl. The pink glow flared. Warm air rolled through the yard. The blood smell vanished under sweetness and cold fire. A woman's shape formed above the altar, tall, beautiful, and unreal, with long hair made of pink light and eyes that looked like they had watched kingdoms embarrass themselves for fun. The surviving thugs stared like their brains had left their skulls. Even I had to admit the reward knew its target audience. True Sight labeled the forming figure. Wish avatar. Bond potential, unstable. Compatibility, high stimulation match. I crossed my arms, finally. A reward with manners. The Abyss Drake egg launched itself off the gravel like a cannonball. It hit the pink avatar in the chest. The avatar opened her mouth in perfect royal outrage. Then the egg ate her. No ceremony, no romance. No thank you. The pink light vanished into the shell in one greedy gulp. The yard went silent. I stared at the egg. The egg pulsed. True Sight updated. Hatching progress, major surge. Trademark acquired, hardtail pattern, future companion influence, altered. A tiny red-pink mark curled across the shell like the suggestion of a tail ending in a heart. I pointed at it. "You owe me a wife." The egg pulsed again, completely unashamed. That was the ugliest part. It had my greed and none of my bills. The avatar's last pink spark did not disappear completely. It sank into the shell and curled under the surface, chasing the red veins in a slow circle. For 1 second, the egg looked less like a monster seed and more like something with personality. That made it worse. Weapons were simple. Pets were expensive. Mythic unborn dragon companions with taste for beautiful rewards were going to ruin my budget and my dignity at the same time. I still stored it carefully. I was greedy, not stupid. The surviving Nightfall thug made a strangled sound that might have been laughter or trauma. I decided not to kill him for it. Let him crawl back and tell Mara Sable that a stranger had wounded her, killed her released Calamity, stole the pink altar reward, and then got robbed by his own egg. Humiliation traveled faster when enemies delivered it for free. I put the egg back into the pocket vault. The heart-tail mark stayed visible in my awareness, pulsing beside the hatching progress. The main payoff had landed before the next problem did. The egg was no longer just hungry, it was developing traits. The future thing inside that shell had eaten blood, calamity essence, and a pleasure queen avatar like a spoiled heir cleaning a buffet. Then gray rain began to fall. It hissed on the black blood. The pink altar flickered. The wounded thug who had laughed reached for a green bracelet on his wrist. A faint shield started to form around him. Then the gray rain touched the bracelet. The shield died. His face went empty with panic. My body did not weaken. Core blood still burned warm in my muscles. Fate watch still ticked in my pulse. The blood crown growth was permanent. The bracelet's borrowed trick was not. My phone buzzed once. A public post flashed across the emergency feed before vanishing. Temporary reward powers fail in gray rain. Do not go outside if your strength is borrowed. Deleted. Too late. I had seen enough. At the time, I did not know every limit of the rain. I knew the one that mattered. Mara Sable had escaped by blood mist. Blood mist was a temporary trick with a cost. And if gray rain could turn borrowed shields into wet jewelry, then the woman who had slipped through my fingers was not immortal. She was weather-dependent. I stood in the yard while the rain erased blood, bodies, and the pink altar's glow. The dead men vanished first. Then the calamity ribbons. Then the footprints. The surviving thug crawled through the gate before the rain could decide whether witnesses counted as stains. I let him go. Some messages were better delivered, terrified. By dawn, Nightfall Syndicate would know Mara had lost men, blood, and face in her own yard. FARO would see another abnormal fight erased by gray rain, and I would be hunting on nights when borrowed power turned off. The city thought gray rain was cleanup. For me, it had just become hunting weather. If rain shut down borrowed power, then rainy nights belonged to me. That was the thought that pulled me back into the streets before the gray clouds had finished choking Fair Lake City. Not courage, not justice, math. Mara Sable had escaped me because her blood mist was faster than my hands. The wounded Nightfall thug's shield had died the moment gray rain touched it. My core blood body stayed warm. Fate watch stayed awake. The pocket vault stayed open in my mind. Permanent strength survived the rain. Borrowed tricks got washed, so I went hunting. The first proof came before the bridge. 2 black band collectors had cornered a delivery driver under a gas station awning. One collector held a little red charm between his fingers and kept telling the driver to hand over his reward pouch. Rain does not touch us, the collector said. That was a brave sentence from a man standing 6 inches from water. He crushed the charm. A red smoke blade formed in his hand for half a second, then gray rain blew sideways under the awning and touched it. The blade died. The collector stared at his empty fist. The driver stared too. I stepped behind the collector and broke his wrist against the pump guard. His partner turned, reached for a green flash charm, and watched that one sputter out before it left his palm. Fate Watch showed me his knee. Core blood supplied the rest. Both men hit the wet concrete. The delivery driver whispered, "Are you Faro?" "Worse for them," I said. I took the dead red charm and the sputtered green one. Low grade, temporary, nearly ruined by rain. Perfect blood-crowned scraps if they survived the pocket vault. The driver ran without asking my name. Good. Names were expensive. I did not find Mara. What I found was worse for my sleep and better for my inventory. Under a rail bridge at the edge of West Rail District, 2 altars faced each other across a flooded service road. The left altar glowed black-red behind a carving of a proud bird with broken wings. The right altar sat cracked down the middle, its stone surface shaped like a kneeling figure with one hand on a buried blade. No crowd, no police, no nightfall muscle. Just gray rain, 2 hungry altars, and the feeling that the street was waiting for someone stupid enough to read the script. I was available. True Sight opened over the left altar first. Hidden demand: a chosen phoenix must cut away the broken air before his return. Reward trace: black vengeance vessel. Backlash risk: obsession takes form. The right altar answered a breath later. Hidden demand: the broken air must receive final contempt and choose blood over pleading. Reward trace: red weapon seed. Best offering: words that complete the abandonment. I stared at the 2 altars. Then I laughed quietly. The new world had built a bad revenge drama under a bridge and expected me not to recognize it. Proud chosen woman, broken man, final rejection, comeback weapon, black backlash. I had seen enough cheap stories to know the pattern. Never underestimate the fallen heir, never dump the silent man before his awakening, never laugh at the person kneeling in the first act. The difference was that I did not have to be the broken heir. I only had to be the bastard who pushed the scene to its most profitable ending. I pulled 2 blank receipts from my pocket vault and wrote with the blood still leaking from a cut on my knuckle. On the first receipt, I wrote, "Cut him loose before his weakness becomes yours." On the second I wrote, "Stop begging, let the blade answer." The words looked stupid in the rain. Then the altars inhaled. The left altar formed a shadow woman in red light, beautiful and cruel, crowned by a burning bird shape. The right altar formed a kneeling shadow man with cracked hands and a face hidden by wet hair. Not real civilians. Roles? Good. I preferred exploiting a script over stealing from an actual desperate man. My standards were not high, but they existed when convenient. The red-crowned shadow woman read the first receipt, her face twisted with contempt. She stepped toward the kneeling figure and spoke in a voice that made the rain tremble. "You are always wait!" The kneeling shadow man read the second receipt. His hands stopped shaking. The left altar flared black. The right altar flared red. Both lights punched into the sky at once. So much for stealth. The red altar cracked open, and a black dagger rose from the buried blade slot, its edge thin as a bad thought and its core burning red. The shadow man's hand moved toward it. Mine moved faster. I took the dagger. The instant my fingers closed around the hilt, the kneeling shadow collapsed into ash like his only job had been to create the weapon and be disappointed about it. The red light snapped into the blade. True Sight hit me with the name: Soul Dagger, grade, mythic. Function: cuts soul residue, feeds on fear and resentment, strengthens through kills, resists mental corruption through consumed will. That was all I had time to read. The black altar screamed. The red-crowned shadow woman split open from throat to stomach. Something crawled out of her, taller than the bridge, wearing her face like a mask and her contempt like skin. A vengeance wraith. It looked at the empty hand where the dagger should have gone. Then it looked at me. "Thief," it said. The role I had manipulated had noticed the thief standing outside its script. That meant the backlash was not random anymore. It had picked me. I raised the soul dagger. Technically, consultant. The wraith crossed the road without moving its legs. Fate Watch screamed, not ticked. Screamed. The red second hand split into 3 possible deaths. Claw through chest, teeth through throat, black wing through spine. My new weapon had come with a boss fight attached. That was fair. Annoying, but fair. The rain did not weaken the wraith. That was the first bad sign. Gray water ran through its body and came out black, like the thing was staining the weather instead of being washed by it. Temporary tricks died in the rain. Obsession apparently had better waterproofing, so the easy plan died. No waiting for the storm to solve it, no lazy rainy night god routine. If I wanted the dagger, I had to earn it the stupid way. I ducked under the first claw. The wraith's fingers carved 4 lines through the concrete behind me. I slashed its arm with the soul dagger. The blade passed through black flesh and dragged out a trail of pale sparks. The wraith recoiled. It could be hurt. Then it smiled. The sparks twisted into whispers. Lydia's voice. Troy's laugh. My father's last marked calendar page. My mother's name spoken in a hospital hallway I did not want to remember. Every shameful, useful wound in me tried to stand up at once. Mental attack. That explained why the dagger mattered. The wraith was not trying to kill my body first, it was trying to make my mind kneel. I bit my tongue until I tasted blood and drove core blood heat through my chest. Wrong altar, I said through my teeth. I already burned my begging phase. I lunged. The soul dagger cut through the whisper cloud, and the voices snapped off like strings. The blade drank the resentment. Not mine, hers, the wraith's, the whole ugly script's. For one breath, I felt the dagger become heavier and sharper at the same time. Then the wraith hit me with the bridge. Not literally the whole bridge. It ripped a chunk of concrete railing loose with one wing and hurled it into my ribs. Fate Watch warned me half a beat early. My body moved, but not enough. The concrete clipped my side and threw me into the flooded road. Something cracked. Core blood burned immediately, but healing pain is still pain. My breath left like it had received better job offers. The wraith drifted above me. Mortal, it said, you stirred a tragedy and thought you owned the ending. I coughed blood into the rain. No, I said, I thought the ending might be sharp. It drove a claw down. I rolled, pulled 1/4 act stub from the pocket vault, and slapped it against the wraith's wrist. The blue ticket burned in the gray rain. For a second I was terrified the rain would wash the ticket dead too. It did not. The 4th act stub was not borrowed power from a charm, it was an altar reward already bound through use, and the rain hated loose tricks more than owned tools. That distinction went straight into my survival ledger. For a human, the stub gave 3 seconds. For a thing made of obsession, it gave less than 1. But less than 1 was not nothing. The wraith froze with its claw, an inch from my face. Its stolen eyes widened. The red-crowned woman's contempt cracked, and behind it flashed the broken moment that had made the wraith possible, a role abandoning another role and realizing too late that cruelty had become a cage. I did not admire the tragedy. I stabbed it. The soul dagger went through the wraith's palm, up the arm, and into the center of its chest. The blade did not meet bone. It met a knot of black light wrapped around a red spark. Fate Watch showed the timing. Twist now or die. I twisted. The wraith screamed so hard every puddle under the bridge jumped. Black light rushed into the dagger. The red spark fought, flickered, then snapped into the blade too. The wraith's face changed from the crowned woman's pride to something younger, uglier, and scared. Then the soul dagger ate it. Silence hit the bridge. The black altar cracked first, its proud bird carving folded inward like a paper crown in rain. The red altar followed, the kneeling stone figure dissolving now that the weapon had chosen an owner. I lay in the flooded road with broken ribs knitting themselves together and a mythic dagger buzzing in my hand like it had enjoyed the meal. True sight updated, soul dagger bound, growth path active, consumed will, wraith fragment, mental resistance, awakened. I laughed once, then regretted it because my ribs complained. Power was power. I had stirred the pot because the pot had a mythic blade at the bottom. That did not make the wraith's claw marks feel philosophical, it made them expensive. I forced myself up and leaned against the bridge wall while gray rain erased black residue from the road. The soul dagger slid into the pocket vault, but even hidden, I could feel it there, waiting. Hungry in a cleaner, colder way than the egg. The abyss drake egg pulsed from the vault too, annoyed that the dagger had eaten something before it could. Do not start, I muttered. The egg pulsed again. My inventory had become a family argument made of monsters. Then tires hissed through rain at the far end of the service road. I turned my hood down and stepped into the shadow under the bridge. 2 vehicles stopped beyond the broken guardrail. Federal lights, no siren. Faro had learned not to announce every arrival after gray rain started eating their proof. On the opposite side, 3 figures in dark coats slipped between the railcars, black bands on their arms. Nightfall Syndicate scouts? Both groups had come for the same impossible red-black light. Neither saw my face clearly. That mattered. Agent Ivy Dalton had almost sensed me in daylight. Mara Sable had seen enough of me to be afraid. Nightfall had a terrified witness crawling back from the pink altar yard, and now Pharaoh and Nightfall were standing on opposite ends of a bridge where I had just stolen a mythic weapon from a revenge script. The red and black lights were gone, but the consequence stayed. A Pharaoh responder swept a sensor across the road and said, "Residual signal, same category as the plaza." One of the Nightfall scouts heard that and froze. I watched from the shadow with one hand over my cracked ribs and the other near the pocket vault. The smart move was leaving, the greedy move was listening longer. For once, I chose smart. I slipped into the drainage path before either side reached the broken altars. The gray rain covered my tracks, but it did not cover the pattern anymore. Hot chips, gold cube, blood crown, pink altar, red and black bridge. Too many impossible events had started orbiting the same unknown man. By the time I reached Northcut Meats, the soul dagger was bound. My ribs were mostly healed, and 1/4 act stub was gone. I had gained the weapon I needed for things that attacked the mind, fed on fear, or refused to stay flesh. The soul dagger was mine. The search tightened because of it. Pharaoh was no longer chasing a rumor from Crown Mall Plaza. Nightfall was no longer hunting, only a stranger who embarrassed Mara Sable. Both sides had watched the city light up red and black over the same district, in the same rain, after the same trail of dead altars. I locked the Northcut basement behind me and set the soul dagger on the blood crown altar's edge. The altar did not eat it. It bowed its red teeth slightly, like even the private god machine knew the dagger was not trash. The soul dagger felt less like a trick and more like an answer. Outside, gray rain tapped on the roof. Inside, the egg pulsed, the dagger hummed, the blood crown waited, and Fair Lake City kept narrowing its search for the man who made rich offerings look stupid and dangerous lights appear in the wrong places. The next people to circle me would not be random hunters. They would come with uniforms, black bands, borrowed luck, and old grudges. By sunset, Crown Mall Plaza had learned to fear bright lights. That did not stop desperate people from lining up in front of the altars anyway. I came back with my hood up, the soul dagger hidden in the pocket vault, and one hand still sore from the wraith fight under the bridge. Pharaoh vans rolled past the plaza twice without sirens. Nightfall syndicate men watched from the food court entrance with black bands around their sleeves. Nightfall had not been born from altars. It had been selling debt, fear, and dirty loyalty for years. The new world only gave it a holier cash register. Both sides were searching for the same unknown red light owner. Neither one expected him to be buying cheap noodles 20 feet away. The plaza looked uglier than it had on the day my hot chips embarrassed every rich gambler in Fair Lake City. People had stopped laughing at poor offerings. Now, they laughed at poor people. A man in a winter coat stood in front of a small green altar with a hospital bracelet on his wrist and a gold wedding ring in his palm. 2 Nightfall thugs flanked him like casino staff. One thug said, "Slot fee first!" The man looked at the ring. "This is all I have." "Then it better pull something good," the thug said. The man fed the ring to the altar. Green light flickered, coughed, and spat out a cracked charm no bigger than a tooth. The man grabbed it like it was medicine. The thug took it from him before his fingers closed. "House cut," the thug said. The man begged loud enough for half the plaza to hear. "My wife is in Fair Lake General Hospital. Please, just let me keep it." The second thug shoved him to the pavement. "You paid to pull the slot. You did not pay to keep the machine." That was Nightfall's business model in one sentence. They found people with no choices, gave them one more awful choice, then charged rent on the miracle. I was deciding whether the 2 thugs were worth a public problem when a black Maybach rolled up to the curb. Old grudges have terrible timing. Troy Bancroft stepped out first in a clean coat, polished shoes, and the same rich boy expression he wore the day he tried to buy my dragon egg like it was a watch. Lydia Wren followed him, all red lipstick, high heels, and fake calm. Then she saw me. Her face changed before she fixed it. That tiny crack was almost worth the trip by itself. "Miles?" Lydia said loudly. The nearest crowd turned because her voice still knew how to find an audience. Troy looked at me, then at my plain jacket, then at the food tray in my hand. "You came back to the plaza?" Troy asked. "That is either brave or pathetic." I took one bite of noodles. Lydia's smile tightened. "Still pretending you were above me?" "No," I said. "I am eating." That got a few short laughs from people who did not know if they were allowed to laugh yet. Lydia hated that. She had always hated losing control of a room more than losing a person. She lifted one hand. 4 private guards stepped out from behind the Maybach. 2 of them wore Nightfall black bands under their coat cuffs. Borrowed men, borrowed danger, borrowed confidence. Troy noticed me looking and smiled. "The city changed, Miles. Some people adapted." "You rented bracelets from criminals," I said. "Inspirational." Lydia walked closer. A faint green shimmer crawled over the charm at her throat, the kind of cheap luck glow that made normal men miss a step or say the wrong thing. It slid over me and failed to find a place to bite. Core blood burned under my skin. The soul dagger hummed in the pocket vault like it wanted permission. I did not give it any. Lydia was not worth mythic steel, not yet. Lydia stopped close enough that I could smell expensive perfume and panic covered with sugar. "I heard you had a good day with one altar," she said, so the crowd could hear. "Do not mistake that for becoming someone." Troy pulled a thick cash envelope from his coat and held it between 2 fingers. Lydia pointed one red heel toward the ground in front of me. "Kneel," she said. Kiss my shoe, tell everyone you were lucky and sorry, then I will give you enough money to stop embarrassing yourself. The plaza went quiet in a hungry way. People had seen alters eat gold, monsters crawl out of alleys, and federal agents sweep streets with sensors. None of that killed the old human appetite for watching someone get humiliated. Lydia knew that appetite. She had fed it with my name for months. Troy lifted the envelope higher. Come on, it is more money than you made in a year. I looked at the cash. Then I looked at Lydia's shoe. Then I handed my noodles to the ruined man from the green altar. Hold this, I told him. The man blinked at me. What? Hold the noodles! He took the tray with both hands. Lydia laughed once. You are really making this dramatic? I moved. The slap landed before her guards finished raising their arms. It was not elegant, it was not symbolic, it was the clean, ugly sound of 3 months of rent money, fake emergencies, designer bags, pity smiles, and public cruelty getting paid back with interest. Lydia hit the pavement on her side. Her heel snapped off and bounced under Troy's Maybach. The cash envelope burst in Troy's hand. Bills scattered across the plaza like his dignity had found smaller bodies and tried to escape. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then Lydia touched her cheek and stared at the red on her fingers. You hit me, she whispered. I took my noodles back from the ruined man. I improved the offer, I said. You keep the cash. I keep my mouth clean. The first guard swung a baton at my head. Fate watch ticked. I stepped inside the swing, caught the guard's wrist, and drove my elbow into his ribs. Core blood made the sound heavier than it should have been. He folded and slid across the pavement until he hit the green altar steps. The second guard grabbed for my throat. I grabbed his belt and collar, lifted him off his feet, and threw him into the third guard. They crashed through a plastic display of bottled drinks. Soda exploded over nightfall black bands. The fourth guard was smarter. He pulled a thin green charm from his sleeve and crushed it. Wind snapped around him. His body blurred forward, knife aimed at my stomach. Borrowed speed. Temporary charm. The plaza saw a streak. I saw a late payment. Fate watch showed his path. My left hand caught his knife wrist. My right hand slapped the side of his face so hard his borrowed wind died mid-step. He spun once, hit the pavement, and stayed there with his cheek pressed against a $5 bill. The green altar's ruined offerer stared at me with my noodles still steaming in his hands. The nightfall thug who had stolen his cracked charm took 1 step back. I looked at him. He dropped the charm on the ground. Smart, I said. The ruined man grabbed it and ran before anyone changed their mind. That was a useful reaction. Fear had just returned 1 stolen miracle. Lydia tried to stand. Her broken heel betrayed her first. Troy reached for her, then stopped when I looked at his hand. You cannot do this, Troy said. I kicked the cash envelope toward him. Buy a better sentence. His mouth shut. Lydia's eyes shook between rage and disbelief. She wanted the crowd to rush to her side. She wanted somebody to call me a monster. She wanted the old plaza, where beauty and money decided who deserved sympathy. The crowd gave her nothing. The same people who had laughed at my hot chips now stared at the guards on the ground and the cash under Troy's shoes. Public status is cruel. It does not love you. It only rents itself to whoever looks strongest in the moment. Lydia learned that on concrete. One of the nightfall thugs near the green altar muttered, "He is the one from the yard?" I heard it. So did Lydia. Her face sharpened with a new kind of hope. She did not know what I had done to Mara Sable's crew. She only heard that Nightfall already had a reason to hate me, and she was the kind of woman who treated other people's grudges like a ladder. You think this ends here? Lydia said. No, I said. You have always been bad at ending things. I left before the plaza could decide whether to applaud or call someone with heavier weapons. The food stalls behind the mall were still open because the end of the world had not killed appetite. It had only made everyone eat faster. That was where I found Ray Navarro. He stood beside a folding table with a blue porcelain cup on a stained towel, a stack of hospital receipts under one elbow, and the face of a man who had already sold his pride and found out pride had bad resale value. A vendor across from him laughed. Nobody wants your grandma cup, Ray. If it was altar-touched, it would glow. Ray kept his voice steady. It was found beside an altar after gray rain. Then it is wet trash, the vendor said. Ray's hand tightened around the receipts. I stopped walking. True sight opened over the cup. Stillwater cup. Grade, legendary. Function, stores gray rain without decay. Released rain suppresses borrowed, temporary, and unstable abilities within splash range. Limit, splash range is brief. Bad timing turns a legendary cup into wet porcelain. My noodles suddenly became much less interesting. The cup looked useless. Blue glaze, hairline crack. No glow. No carved dragon, no dramatic smoke, the kind of thing rich gamblers would step over while chasing red pillars. Perfect. Ray saw me staring and straightened. If you are here to mock me too, make it quick. How much do you need? I asked. He did not say a sales price. That told me more than a sales pitch. Ray looked down at the top receipt. My daughter Ruby needs another payment before morning. 28,000 gets her through the week. More if the hospital changes its mind. His voice did not break. His hands did. The vendor snorted. You hear that? He thinks a teacup is worth hospital money. I placed a cash stack on the table. The vendor stopped laughing. Ray stared at the money. That is too much. No, I said, it is not enough. The cup is worth more than your whole street. His eyes flicked to the cup. Good. He was desperate, not stupid. I leaned closer so only Ray heard the next part. You want Ruby's bills paid? You listen once. People are throwing away bad altar rewards because they do not know what trash is worth now. You buy them quietly. Cracked charms, failed items, ugly trinkets, anything altar touched. You do not ask why. You do not say my name. You bring them to the drop I give you, and your daughter keeps getting paid for. Ray looked at the cash, then at the cup, then at me. That sounds like a leash, he said. It is, I said. The difference is I pay before I pull. Ray almost smiled. It died before it reached his eyes. And if Nightfall asks, he said, that question was better than loyalty. It meant he had already seen the teeth. Then you listen, I said. You tell me what they want and you never pretend they are your friends. Ray slid the cup toward me. My daughter first. Your daughter first, I said. The words changed his posture. Not trust. Trust would have been stupid after one conversation in an alley behind a mall. But his shoulders stopped curling inward like he expected the whole street to kick him again. The vendor who had mocked him looked at the cash, then at Ray, and suddenly found a very important stain on his own counter. Ray noticed. For a desperate man, that tiny silence was a meal. He folded one hospital receipt and pushed it across the table with the cup. Keep that, Ray said. Proof the money went where I said it would. I took the receipt. The paper was ordinary. ATM withdrawal line, hospital payment desk stamp, Ruby Navarro's name printed near the middle. No glow. Still, true sight flickered once like the world had noticed a poor man choosing hope while everyone else priced him as meat. I put the Stillwater cup and receipt into the pocket vault. That was the real win of the night. Lydia on the ground felt good. The guards felt better. But the cup was a future enemy's bad day waiting quietly in porcelain. Then every altar in Crown Mall Plaza went dark. The red, green, blue, and white reward glows snapped shut at once. Above the skyline, the moon rose early and wrong, swollen red behind the glass towers of Fair Lake City. People screamed because the altars did not disappear. They opened counters. Numbers burned over every stone mouth. 59 minutes, 58 minutes, 57, reward beams vanished. Altar mouths widened. Even the tiny green altar at the plaza steps began to breathe like something inside it had stopped waiting politely. Ray whispered, "What is that?" I looked at the blood moon and felt the abyss drake egg pulse inside the pocket vault. Hungry. The city had just turned every ignored altar into a locked door with a timer. And I had a legendary cup, a new frontman, one last fourth-act stub, a mythic dagger, and a dragon egg that thought disaster looked like dinner. The blood moon did not make Fair Lake City quiet. It made the city count down out loud. Every altar mouth glowed with a red number. People ran from one stone block to another, trying to guess what the counters meant before the counters reached zero. Rich offerers threw jewelry. Desperate families threw photos. One man threw his car keys, then screamed when the altar spat them back, and the number kept falling. Reward beams were gone. That was the first rule flip. No red pillar, no gold column, no public proof that someone had won. The blood moon hid the winners and punished the ignored. Good for me. Terrible for everyone else. Ray Navarro stood beside his folding table with the cash stack pressed under both hands. He looked at me like he wanted an explanation and hated that I might have one. Take the money to Ruby, I told him, and the cup? Sold. And whatever this is? Ray asked, looking at the red counters. A bad night to be normal, I said. He swallowed, then grabbed his receipts and ran toward the taxi line. I let him go. Kindness only mattered if it survived long enough to become useful. The hospital receipt he had given me sat in my pocket vault beside the Stillwater cup. It kept flickering at the edge of true sight, not as a reward, but as a possibility. Possibility was expensive under a blood moon. I followed the nearest silent pull in my vision to a narrow service alley behind the plaza. A small black altar stood beside a row of dumpsters. No crowd, no flowers, no gold. Just a starless carving at the top and a counter burning down from 43 minutes. True sight opened. Hidden demand, proof of hope paid for with fear. Human market value, irrelevant, strongest carried resonance, hope paid for with fear by a desperate father. I stared at the receipt in my hand. Ray had not offered it to an altar. He had offered it to me because he still wanted a witness that his daughter mattered. That was the kind of stupid, stubborn human thing altars loved more than diamonds. I placed the folded receipt into the starless mouth. The altar did not flare. It went completely black. Then a single point of white light appeared inside the dark, small enough to hide under my thumb and bright enough to make my ribs ache. True Sight named it. Lifeline Star. Grade, Legendary. Function, 1-use death reversal. If bonded holder suffers fatal collapse, restores body and soul to the last survivable state. Consumed on activation. Pre-activation spark warns when death gets close enough to breathe on my neck. For once, I did not make a joke. I bonded it immediately. The white point sank under my skin and settled behind my heart like a second chance with teeth. The starless altar cracked, satisfied, and its red counter vanished. That was the Blood Moon's second rule. It did not care whether an offering looked valuable. It cared whether the answer was exact before time ran out. A scream rolled over the rooftops before I could test a third rule. Not one scream, many. I climbed the fire stairs behind the service alley and looked over the plaza roofs. 3 blocks away, a neglected altar reached zero in front of a closed discount store. Its stone mouth split open, and a thing made of wet asphalt and wire crawled out on 6 legs. Someone nearby was live streaming instead of running, because people will film anything if fear and attention arrive together. On the phone screen, the monster grabbed the man who had been throwing car keys and slammed him into a parked truck. The stream ended in static. The altar dropped 3 red chips onto the pavement before the feed died. True Sight caught the shape through the distance. Altar fragments. The city had turned into a vending machine that killed customers and paid in evolution material. I almost smiled. Almost. Then a child screamed from the same block, and the smile died before it got comfortable. I jumped from the fire stairs to a delivery awning, hit the alley pavement hard enough to crack it, and ran toward the monster. The asphalt thing was tearing open the side of a bus when I arrived. A woman and 2 kids were trapped behind the folding door. The driver had one hand on the emergency lever and blood running down his face. The monster turned toward me. The soul dagger slid into my hand. The blade had been quiet since the wraith. At the sight of the calamity, it woke up hungry. "You get fear," I told it. "The egg gets blood. I get fragments. Everybody behaves." The abyss. Drake egg pulsed from the pocket vault like it disagreed with the distribution. "Later," I said. The monster lunged. Fate Watch ticked 3 beats ahead. Wire legs, asphalt jaw, a swing meant to tear my hip open. I cut through the front leg first. The soul dagger dragged out black sparks and a sound like a radio dying. The monster staggered. I drove core blood through my legs, jumped onto the bus hood, and stabbed down through the asphalt skull. The blade drank fear. The body collapsed into road sludge. 3 red chips clattered onto the pavement. The bus driver stared at me through the cracked windshield. "Door," I said. He hit the lever. The woman pulled the kids out and ran without asking my name. Good. Names made survivors expensive. I grabbed the altar fragments and fed a strip of calamity residue to the egg before it started pulsing like an unpaid landlord. The shell warmed. Hardtail markings flickered once beneath the black surface. Still not enough. The dragon wanted stronger meat. The soul dagger wanted more resentment. I wanted the city to stop making me agree with them. Another counter hit 2 streets over before I even left the bus. This one released a swarm of fist-sized stone beetles from a jewelry store altar. They poured across the sidewalk toward a woman trapped behind a security gate. A normal hero would have made a speech. I kicked a newspaper box into the swarm, dumped core blood through my arms, and turned the soul dagger sideways. The first sweep broke 12 shells. The second sweep made the rest turn on me instead of the gate. That was all I needed. 30 seconds later, the woman was running, the beetles were paste, and 6 tiny altar fragments clicked into my palm. A Pharaoh emergency alert hit every phone on the block. Federal Anomaly Response Office notice. Verified altar fragments accepted at emergency collection sites. High-value compensation available. Do not approach Blood Moon calamities. The number was huge. The crowd saw money. I saw bait. If Pharaoh wanted fragments that badly, fragments did something bigger than pay rent. True Sight confirmed it when I held one up. Altar fragments. Function, condensed altar shell and calamity core. Can feed altar evolution, strengthen bonded growth items, or stabilize unstable ritual rewards. I put them in the pocket vault. "Sorry, Director. Isaac Penn," I muttered. "My private god machine eats first." That was enough public rescue for 1 block. Then the elite calamity screamed from the plaza. It rose out of the same green altar where Nightfall had been farming desperate people an hour earlier. The stone mouth split open, and something wearing all those stolen failed charms crawled out like a human made of broken luck. Rings, cracked pendants, burnt strings, and half-dead talismans hung from its body. Every time someone tried to run, one of the charms flashed and tripped them, blinded them, or made their shoes stick to the pavement. The Nightfall thugs who had called people human slots were the first ones it grabbed. That was funny for half a second. Then the Calamity lifted a teenager by the neck and fun left the area. I crossed the plaza through the panicking crowd. The elite Calamity saw me and opened a mouth full of other people's offerings. Mine, it said in 3 stolen voices. Greedy, I said. I respect it. Still killing you. It snapped a necklace charm. My left knee buckled as borrowed bad luck tried to fold my body into the ground. The charm was unstable, temporary. Borrowed from the people Nightfall had fleeced. The still water cup sat in my pocket vault, empty and useless until I filled it with gray rain. So I did the rude version. I threw core blood heat through my knee until the charm's bad luck lost the argument with muscle. Pain shot up my thigh. I kept moving. Fate watch ticked. The Calamity's next charm flashed before its arm moved. I cut the wrist. The soul dagger ate the resentment trapped in the stolen talismans, one ugly spark at a time. The creature shrieked and backed toward Lydia's broken heel spot. Perfect! I kicked it into the exact patch of pavement where she had fallen. Then I drove the soul dagger through its chest. Every stolen charm went black. The Calamity exploded into red fragments, green dust, and a rain of useless jewelry. The crowd did not cheer. They were too busy scrambling away from the man who had just killed the thing their own greed had fed. That reaction was fine. Fear gave me privacy. I collected the fragments, swept the broken charms into a plastic takeout bag, and left before Faro sirens reached the plaza. Northcut meats smelled like bleach, cold metal, and the kind of privacy money cannot buy after the world ends. I fed the broken charms to the Blood Crown altar first. The red teeth chewed through fake luck, burnt protection, weak speed, and failed healing. The altar spat out 3 bottles of core blood and 1 darker bead that made the soul dagger hum. I fed the bead to the dagger. The blade grew a thin red line along its spine. I fed Calamity residue to the Abyss Drake egg. The egg drank until the heart-tail markings glowed under the shell for 3 full breaths. Still not hatched, still greedy, still mine. By midnight, the blood moon had turned Fair Lake City into a slaughter map. I did not chase every scream. I could not. The old me would have hated that sentence. The new me understood that dead heroes did not save anyone tomorrow, so I chose high-value targets, altars near crowds, calamities with fragments, monsters carrying enough blood to matter. Every fight gave the city 1 less problem and gave me 1 more resource. That was not noble. That was efficient. Under a blood moon, efficient was the closest thing to mercy I could afford. Ray called while I was dumping another bag of failed rewards into a freezer crate outside Northcut. Ruby is paid through the week, he said. His voice sounded wrecked. Good, I said. Now tell me why you sound worse. Ray took a breath. Nightfall contacted me. They know I bought small altar items for cash tonight. They said they can get Ruby better treatment if I bring my purchases to them. And if I say no, they will wonder who else is paying me. That was the real invitation, not friendship. A collar with velvet on it. I opened the crate and looked at the trash rewards Ray had already collected from scared people who wanted fast cash. Cracked charms, failed talismans, half-charged stones, ugly little miracles nobody respected. To Nightfall, they were bait. To the Blood Crown, they were breakfast. You still want in? I asked Ray. No, Ray said. Good answer. Then he said, but Ruby does not get to survive on what I want. Better answer. Listen to them, I said. Do not promise anything you cannot survive. Do not mention me. If they ask who funds you, say desperation. It is the only sponsor they believe in. Ray gave a short, bitter laugh. And if they make me prove myself, call before you bleed, I said. He was quiet for a second. You talk like bleeding is a scheduling problem. It is if you are organized. Ray ended the call without saying thank you. I liked him more for that. Gratitude was cheap before the miracle landed. He had a sick daughter, a criminal invitation, and a stranger with too much money asking him to stand near wolves. He did not owe me loyalty yet, he owed me usefulness. That was enough. The hidden recycling network began with 1 freezer crate, 1 desperate father, and a city full of idiots selling failed rewards for less than a steak dinner. By the time the eastern sky began to pale, the lifeline star rested behind my heart, the egg had surged again, the soul dagger had eaten enough fear to feel sharper in my grip, and the blood crown had turned Nightfall's scraps into permanent strength. That was the payoff. Then Fate Watch ticked, not toward an altar, toward the road behind Northcut Meats. I shut the freezer crate and killed the yard light. 3 vehicles rolled past the far fence with headlights off. The lead car was a black Maybach with 1 broken scrape along the lower door from a guard's body hitting it at Crown Mall Plaza. Lydia sat in the back seat, cheeks still swollen, eyes bright with the kind of shame that wants witnesses dead. Nightfall men stepped out behind her. She had not come to apologize. She had come to spend borrowed power before Ray's little trash network grew teeth. I let Lydia's ambush follow me for 2 blocks before I got bored. The smart move would have been slipping through Northcutt's back tunnels, letting gray rain or daylight or somebody else's bad luck solve the problem. The useful move was different. If Nightfall wanted to spend men on my ex-girlfriend's pride, I wanted to see the receipt. I walked away from Northcutt Meats and into an open loading yard between 2 empty warehouses. No crowds, no civilians, no altars close enough to be damaged if the night got loud. Then I turned around. "Stop wasting my time," I said to the dark. The 3 vehicles rolled in slowly. The black Maybach stopped first, 2 vans spread out behind it. Nightfall men climbed out with short blades, stun rods, cheap charms, and the confidence of people who had never watched a mythic dagger eat a wraith. Lydia stepped out last. Her cheek was still swollen from my hand. That made her smile uglier. "You chose a lonely place," she said. "You brought witnesses anyway." "They are not witnesses," Lydia said. "They are cleanup." The strongest thug stepped forward. He had a shaved head, a thick neck, and a machete with a weak green light crawling along the edge. "No name. Good. Names made corpses feel more important than they were." He pointed the machete at me. "Mara wants him alive if possible." Lydia snapped. "I want him kneeling." The thug glanced at her like she had annoyed him. That tiny look told me plenty. Lydia had borrowed Nightfall's men, but she did not own them. She was a useful insult in a nice coat. The thug charged. Fate Watch ticked once. His machete came down toward my shoulder. I caught the blade between 2 fingers. The green light on the machete shook. The thug's eyes widened. His second hand grabbed the handle and pulled. The blade did not move. I squeezed. Steel cracked. The sound carried across the yard. Lydia's smile died before the broken tip hit the ground. "That was the strongest one?" I asked. The thug punched at my throat with his free hand. I let the fist come close enough for him to believe in it, then drove my knee into his stomach. Core blood folded him around the impact. I took the broken machete from his hand and threw it through the tire of the nearest van. The van dropped with a hiss. Now they had fewer exits. Nightfall moved as a group after that. Better than random hunters. Worse than the wraith. A stun rod cracked against my ribs. Core blood burned under the impact. A blade cut my sleeve but missed skin because Fate Watch pulled my shoulder back half a beat early. A red charm burst near my face and tried to flood my head with panic. The soul dagger slid into my palm. The panic charm touched its edge and went silent. That was new. The dagger did not just cut bodies. It hated cheap fear trying to imitate real terror. I cut through the first attacker from collarbone to hip. The soul dagger drank the soul residue before the body hit the asphalt. The second man tried to run. I threw the dagger. It pinned his shadow to the ground first. Then his body followed. The third crushed 2 speed charms and blurred behind me. Fate Watch showed the blur's endpoint. I turned my elbow into his jaw. He dropped on his back, choking through broken teeth. I stepped over him and kicked his stun rod into the dark. One of the vans reversed. I lifted the fallen machete handle and hurled it through the windshield. The driver ducked. The van hit a loading post hard enough to fold its hood. Lydia backed toward the Maybach. The yard filled with the sound of men realizing their numbers were a decoration. That was one of my favorite sounds in the new world. The strongest thug crawled on one elbow and reached for a black flare at his belt. I put my foot on his wrist. "Who sent the borrowed luck?" I asked him. He spat blood. "You think killing street crews scares Nightfall?" "No," I said. "I think it improves the neighborhood." I pressed down. His wrist cracked. He screamed, "Mara! It came from Mara's side! Lydia is under her mark!" Lydia's face went white. There it was. Mara Sable had not just survived the West Rail District. She had started lending pieces of her escape system to prettier trash. I looked at Lydia. "You bought a leash and called it protection." She shook her head too fast. "I am not afraid of you." The last 2 thugs attacked together to prove her wrong for me. One came high with a blade. One came low with a chain. Fate Watch ticked. The soul dagger moved. The chain split. The blade arm opened. The 2 men hit the ground in opposite directions, and the dagger drank enough fear to hum warmly in my hand. Lydia was alone with her Maybach, her swollen cheek, and the men she had promised would make me kneel. She fell before I touched her. Not fainted. Crawled. Her knees hit the asphalt. Her manicured hands scraped black dust and broken glass. She looked up at me through ruined makeup and tried to become beautiful enough to survive. "Miles," she said, "listen to me." I stepped closer. "That is new." She flinched. "I made a mistake," Lydia said. "Troy is nothing. Nightfall is nothing. I can get you money, items, access. I can tell them I tricked you. I can be with you again." The yard went quiet except for the dying van engine. There was a time when that sentence would have split me open. That time had worse posture and paid for her dinners. I crouched in front of her. Lydia's eyes tried to shine. She reached for my sleeve like the old version of me still lived inside it. I caught her wrist before she touched me. Do not smear Troy's fingerprints on my clothes, I said. Her mouth trembled. You do not mean that, Lydia, I said, clear enough for every surviving thug to hear. The blood crown eats cracked charms, dead luck, and failed trash. Even it would spit you back. The humiliation hit harder than the slap. She stopped trying to look pretty. Something bitter and terrified twisted across her face. Then the charm at her throat burst. Blood mist exploded around her. I stabbed through it. The soul dagger cut a red line in the fog, and Lydia screamed from somewhere inside the cloud. For half a second, I saw her shoulder split open. Then the mist snapped backward like a pulled ribbon. Lydia vanished. The smell left behind was familiar. Iron. Perfume. Mara's ugly little escape trick. Gray rain would have made that move weaker. The still water cup would have made it stupid. But the cup was still empty, the sky was clear, and Lydia had chosen her night well. Borrowed power saved her once. Good. One escaped rat could lead to the nest. Fate watch ticked again. This time, not toward Lydia. Toward a roofline across the yard. I looked up. A man in a gray federal field jacket lowered a compact camera half an inch too late. His radio hissed. Flint, pull back, a voice said through the static. Agent Flint. Pharaoh had sent someone closer than I.B. Dalton's public sweeps. Close enough for a face, close enough for a clear shot of the soul dagger in my hand, and dead nightfall men at my feet. I moved. Flint ran. He was fast for a man carrying government equipment and fear. I crossed the yard, jumped onto the crushed van hood, and reached the roof ladder as he kicked it loose. The ladder dropped. I caught the bottom rung with one hand. Flint's eyes met mine over the roof edge. He looked trained. He also looked like he had just discovered training had a ceiling. I climbed one-handed. He threw a silver sensor disc at my face. The disc burst into white static. Fate watch blurred. True sight stuttered. For one breath, the roofline split into 3 false angles. Useful toy. Annoying toy. Flint used that breath to dive across the roof and drop behind the next building. By the time my senses cleared, he was gone into a waiting vehicle with federal plates covered in mud. I could have chased him. I did not. Nightfall corpses were cooling behind me. Lydia had escaped with Mara's blood mist. Pharaoh had my face, or close enough to make my life louder. The smart move was collecting the profit before more uniforms arrived. I returned to the yard and let the soul dagger finish eating the fear residue from the dead. Weak charms went into the pocket vault. Broken rods went in. The cracked machete tip went in. Even the black flare went in because the blood crown was less picky than rich people and more useful than most. The strongest thug was still alive. Barely. He saw me crouch and started shaking. "E-stock warehouse," he said before I asked. "Mara is locking it down. Outsiders get purged after tonight. Lydia was supposed to bring you in or bring proof you ran." "And Rey Navarro?" I asked. His eyes flicked. "That was enough." I leaned closer. "Say it. New buyer," he rasped. "Failed rewards. They want him inside. They think he can feed the human slots." I stood. He reached weakly toward my shoe. "I told you. You did." I cut his flare pouch free, not his throat. Let him crawl. Fear traveled faster when it had a mouth. The blood moon had left one more thread tugging at true sight, a pull I had ignored while killing Lydia's borrowed army. It led away from the yard and toward an abandoned pet market on the edge of the West Rail District. Rows of empty cages rattled in the wind. Old signs promised puppies, fish, birds, all the little lives people bought when they wanted loyalty without earning it. In the center aisle stood a bloodline altar. It was low, black, and carved with nesting shapes. Parent inside child, child inside parent, a chain circling both. True sight opened before I reached it. Hidden demand, found a living line with blood, will, and a token that has no inherited throne. False offerings, family rings, old crests, bought genealogy, dead names without living will, reward trace, nest heart. Blood oath worm pair. I thought of Daniel Keaton's calendar burning into Fate Watch. I thought of Angela Keaton's name coming back to me through wraith whispers. I thought of how every powerful group in Fairlake wanted a line, a badge, a family, a syndicate, an office, a logo, or a borrowed mark to prove they deserved to own other people. I had none of that. No living parents, no family office, no crew I trusted with my back. Just a meat plant basement, a hungry egg, a mythic dagger, and the bad habit of surviving people who priced me wrong. The altar did not want inheritance. It wanted a founder. I broke a plank off an empty kennel. The wood was cheap, damp, and splintered at the edge. Perfect. I cut my palm with the soul dagger and wrote one word in blood. Keaton. Then I pressed the plank into the altar's mouth. The bloodline altar bit down. The whole pet market shook. Cages slammed open and shut down the aisles. Invisible things sniffed the air. For a second, I felt every empty leash in the building pull toward my wrist. The soul dagger hummed. Core blood burned. I did not kneel. "No ancestors," I said. "No borrowed throne. My line starts where I say it starts." The altar went still. Then it opened. Inside sat a pulsing black-red organ wrapped in a shell of bone threads, beating slowly without blood. Nest heart. Grade, Mythic. Function, produces, stores, and nourishes oathworm pairs when fed blood, fear, and bonded will. Beside it lay a sealed glass tube with two pale worms curled around each other like a question nobody decent would ask. Blood oathworm. Grade, legendary. Function, paired control parasite. Mother host holds command pressure over child host. Betrayal, escape, or attack by child host triggers pain, tracking, and possible shutdown. Limit, controls action, not interpretation. A clever host can still obey like a knife. I picked up the tube. The worms twitched toward the soul dagger, then toward my bleeding palm. There was nothing clean about that reward. Good. Clean tools rarely worked on people like Marasable. I stored the nest heart and blood oath worm in the pocket vault and fed the altar a strip of nightfall fear residue as thanks. The bone carvings closed like teeth. Major payoff first, consequence immediately after. My phone buzzed before I reached the market door. Ray. I answered. He did not waste a word. Nightfall wants me at East Dock Warehouse tonight, Ray said. They know I bought failed rewards. They said if I bring my inventory, Ruby stays untouched. If I do not, they find her room. Behind him, I heard hospital machines and a child's soft cough. Ruby was awake. That made the threat worse. I looked back at the empty cages, the bloodline altar, and the place where my name had just become a weapon. FAO had my face. Lydia had Mara's blood mist. Nightfall had Ray by the throat through his daughter. And in my pocket vault, a mother worm and child worm curled around each other, waiting for the first predator arrogant enough to deserve a leash. Go in, I told Ray. His breathing stopped for half a second. Miles. Go in, I repeated. Smile like a desperate man. Count doors, count guards, touch nothing you do not have to. If they move Ruby, call me before you become brave. Ray's voice went low. And if they ask who I work for? I looked at the blood drying across my palm. Tell them hope, I said. They will laugh. Let them. The call ended. Outside, the last red edge of the blood moon sank behind Fair Lake City, and East Dock Warehouse waited with Lydia's shame, Mara's lockdown, Ray's first step inside, and every human slot Nightfall thought it owned. Ray's East Dock Warehouse message should have sent me straight at Nightfall's throat. Instead, my phone rang again before I finished loading his freezer crate. Walt Brenner did not waste time saying hello. His voice came through rough and fast. Briar Hollow Farm is screaming, Miles. The hogs are eating through steel gates, and their blood is black. Ray was waiting for Nightfall to text him an entry time. Ruby was still breathing. East Dock Warehouse would not open its ritual doors until nightfall. Briar Hollow Farm was already bleeding. That made the detour ugly, urgent, and profitable. Walt was the only farm broker still willing to take Northcutt Meat's calls after the Alter era made every normal supply contract look like a joke. He knew where the animals were. He knew which owners were hiding disasters. Most importantly, he knew fear when it squealed through a phone line. You wanted altar-touched blood, Walt said. I found a whole farm full of it. If Pharaoh seals the place first, you get nothing. If Nightfall gets there first, they get everything. I looked at the abyss drake egg pulsing inside the pocket vault. The egg wanted stronger blood. Ray needed me stronger before East Dock Warehouse opened tonight. The soul dagger wanted something that hated life. The Blood Crown altar wanted anything ugly enough to become refined power. Send the gate code, I said. Walt breathed out. You are really going in? No, I said. I am going shopping. Before I left Northcutt, I held the Stillwater cup under the loading dock gutter. The last gray rain of the blood moon slid into the porcelain and stayed there, heavy and silent. Empty cup, empty threat. Full cup, bad day for anything borrowed. Briar Hollow Farm sat beyond a strip of low fields and broken fences, close enough to Fair Lake City for a black pillar to be seen, far enough that screams arrived late. Walt waited by the outer gate in his truck with the engine running. He rolled the window down 3 inches. That is as far as I go, Walt said. Smart. You do not want backup? I brought family. The abyss drake egg pulsed from the pocket vault. The soul dagger hummed like it had heard the insult and wanted credit. Walt looked at the locked gate, then at me. The owner called me crying. Said the hogs were turning inside out. Then the line cut. I heard trees cracking before it died. Any people inside? Maybe 2 farmhands, maybe none. I am not driving in to count bones. That was honest enough. I broke the gate chain with one hand and walked through. The first mutated hog hit me before I reached the barn. It came low through the fog, all bristled meat, split tusks, and black foam dripping from its jaw. Normal hogs are already mean enough. This thing had altar rot in its eyes and a body that looked like it had been packed with extra muscle by an angry butcher. Fate watch ticked. Charge angle, left tusk, follow-up bite. I stepped aside, caught one tusk, and drove the soul dagger down through the skull. The body skidded past me and hit the fence. Black blood poured out. The egg pulsed so hard the pocket vault felt warm against my ribs. Fine, I said, you get a taste. I let the egg drink through the vault's opening just long enough to pull the blood into a dark thread. The shell veins brightened. Meaningful, but not enough. Of course. 1 hog became 3, 3 became a dozen. They burst from the barn, the feed shed, the ditch, and the broken farrowing pens. They moved like a stampede, but Fate Watch turned the rush into separate beats, one body at a time, one angle, one mistake, one cut. The soul dagger ate fear from animals that no longer knew they were animals. The egg drank black blood. A scream came from the feed silo before I could make the mistake worse. A farmhand hung from the outside ladder with one boot caught between bent rungs. 2 plague hogs circled below, snapping high enough to scrape sparks from the metal. He saw the dagger in my hand and shouted, "The tree! The blood goes to the tree! Useful clue. Better than a thank you." I crossed the yard, cut the first hog through the spine, and kicked the second hard enough to break its jaw against the silo base. The farmhand dropped badly. I caught his jacket before his ankles snapped and threw him toward the gate. "Run," I said. He looked past me, face gray. The owner fed the altar scraps under that locust. Thought it made the hogs bigger. There it was, not random rot, human greed with roots. The farmhand limped for the road while the black blood from the dead hogs crawled behind me in the opposite direction. I started to enjoy myself. That was my first mistake. Easy farming makes a man rude. I cut through the last hog near the center yard and let its body collapse beside the old locust tree. The tree stood alone behind the main barn, too big for the property, bark swollen with knots that looked like sealed eyes. Every black blood trail on the farm began moving toward its roots, not flowing downhill, crawling. I stopped smiling. True sight opened over the tree and immediately blurred. Hidden altar root detected. Caretaker function active. Feeding threshold exceeded. The last line came too late. The locust tree woke up. Its bark split down the trunk. A black eye opened inside the wood, wet and ancient and furious that I had been eating its livestock. Roots tore through the ground, branches cracked into hooked limbs. Every dead hog jerked once, emptied the rest of its blood into the soil, and sank flat as if the farm had swallowed them. Then a black pillar punched into the sky. City, visible, perfect. Walt's truck reversed outside the fence so fast, gravel sprayed through the gate. The tree boss turned its eye toward me. A voice scraped out of the bark, not loud, but big enough to make my bones listen. Thief of rot, I raised the soul dagger. You labeled the hogs wrong, they were in the clearance bin. The first vine crossed the yard faster than a whip. Fate Watch showed it. My body still barely dodged. The vine cut through my jacket and opened my shoulder to the bone. Core blood sealed the wound halfway, then the cut blackened at the edges and reopened. Rot poison. Good. I hated boring injuries. A second vine wrapped my ankle and threw me into the barn wall. Boards exploded. My ribs cracked hard enough that the lifeline star behind my heart sparked once in warning. Not spent. Warning. That made the fight more expensive. I drove core blood through my lungs and rolled before a fan of leaf blades shredded the dirt where my head had been. The leaves sank into the ground and hissed like hot knives. I slashed a vine with the soul dagger. The blade bit, but the cut closed around it. The tree laughed through snapping branches. My mythic dagger could hurt ghosts, fear, and men. This thing was a rooted altar with a farm for a stomach. The locust slammed one root into the ground, and every dead hog I had cut open twitched upright on strings of black sap. Not alive. Worse. Meat puppets with tusks. They charged from 3 sides while the eye stayed buried behind bark. The farmhand's warning had bought me the answer, but answers did not block teeth. I cut 2 puppets down, took the third tusk through my thigh, and felt rot try to crawl up the vein before core blood burned it back. Different problem, different tool. The next vine came from my throat. I pulled the Stillwater cup from the pocket vault and threw its gray rain straight into the vine's path. The splash was small, the reaction was not. The vine convulsed, lost its black shine, and dropped like a dead rope. Gray rain ate the borrowed rot running through it, leaving plain wood that cracked under my boot. The tree's eye widened. That reaction was worth bleeding for. "So you can be rude to the weather," I said. The tree screamed. Every branch moved. The farm became blades. I ran, not away, but sideways through its rhythm. Fate Watch showed death angles faster than my body could obey. Leaf cuts opened my cheek, forearm, thigh. Core blood sealed what it could. Rot reopened some of it. The soul dagger drank what resentment clung to the vines, but the tree had too much body and not enough fear. I needed the eye. The tree knew that too. It buried the eye behind a cage of roots and raised one thick branch over me like an executioner's arm. I pulled the hope matchbox. A normal flame would have died in the damp air. A hope match did not burn like a normal flame. I struck it against the box, and the tiny light showed me one ridiculous truth. Every desperate creature believes the final blow is already written. I threw the match into the root cage. The flame did not spread. It chose. It ran along the gray rain-dead vine first, then jumped into the fresh rot roots like it had found dry paper. Black bark curled. The eye flashed into view for one clean breath. The execution branch came down. Fate Watch gave me no safe dodge, so I went forward. The branch hit my back and drove me to one knee. Something in my spine screamed. The lifeline star sparked again, brighter this time. Still not spent! I shoved every drop of core blood heat into my legs, stood under the branch, and drove the soul dagger into the eye. The first inch resisted. The second inch screamed. The third inch broke the farm. Black sap exploded around the blade. The tree boss thrashed hard enough to rip its own roots out of the field. I twisted the dagger with both hands, and the red line along its spine split into a darker edge. The soul dagger learned rot. Then it ate the eye. The black pillar above Briar Hollow Farm snapped like a cable. The locust tree collapsed inward, folding trunk, roots, hog blood, and altar stone into a fist-sized black-red heart that hit the dirt at my feet. For 3 seconds I only breathed. Then, true sight returned in fragments. Soul dagger evolution, rot cut trait awakened. Miniature altar heart, compatible with blood crown altar evolution. Rot mark, applied. I looked at my left wrist. A dark mark curled under the skin, shaped like a tiny root wrapped around a red point. It did not hurt. That worried me more. True sight tried to read deeper and failed. Attention source exceeds range. Child of Rot has noticed you. The name made my new strength feel small in a way muscle could not punch. I gave that feeling one breath. I took the miniature altar heart and left before the Black Pillar's audience arrived. The rescued farmhand had reached Walt's truck by then. He pointed at me with both hands shaking, not because he wanted to accuse me, but because he had just seen a man walk out of a farm that ate its own dead. That reaction mattered. By nightfall, someone human would tell Pharaoh that the Black Pillar had not only ended, it had been killed. Pharaoh lights were already flashing beyond the far road. 2 dark vehicles without markings cut across a field from the opposite side. Nightfall had seen the pillar too. Scavengers would follow both like flies. Walt had not fled completely. His truck waited at the outer bend with the passenger door open and his face gray behind the windshield. "You killed it?" he asked. "I changed ownership." He looked at the farm behind me, then at my torn jacket, then at the black mark on my wrist. "I am not asking." "Good habit," I said. "Back at Northcutt Meats, I did not clean up first. I went straight to the basement and fed the miniature altar heart to the blood crown altar." The crown-shaped mouth opened wider than it ever had. Red teeth bit into the heart. The basement floor shook. The drains under Northcutt pulsed. The abyss drake egg rolled closer from the pocket vault opening without being invited, greedy little beast that it was. The blood crown altar swallowed the altar heart. For a moment, the red lines in the stone softened from blood red to dark gold. A new bottle rose from the center, not dark and violent like normal core blood. This one was clear red, gentle enough that even the glass looked warmer. True Sight labeled it. Refined core blood. Effect, permanent strengthening at reduced violence. Repairs damaged vitality, purifies corrupted blood, stabilizes fragile bodies. Fragile bodies. Ruby Navarro. My phone rang before I touched the bottle. Ray's name filled the screen. When I answered, he was not inside E-Stock warehouse anymore, not yet. He was in a hospital hallway, and the sound behind him was all alarms and running feet. "Miles," Ray said. His voice broke on my name. That told me more than any doctor could. "Ruby crashed," he said. "They said she might not make it through the night." I looked at the refined core blood glowing in my hand. The Black Pillar had brought Pharaoh and Nightfall toward Briar Hollow Farm. The rot mark had put something worse above my name. And the first gentle miracle my private altar ever made had appeared exactly when a little girl's body started losing. Using it at Fair Lake General Hospital could expose me. Not using it would make Ray's loyalty worthless and Ruby dead. The blood crown altar pulsed once, patient and hungry. I stored the bottle in the pocket vault and headed for the door. "Keep her breathing," I told Ray. "I am coming." I went to Fair Lake General Hospital with refined core blood in my pocket, vault, and a Black Pillar's worth of trouble chasing my back. The smart move was hiding. Pharaoh had seen too many lights. Nightfall had Ray by the throat. Briar Hollow Farm had branded me for something called the Child of Rot. Any normal man with my inventory would have locked himself under Northcutt Meats and waited for the city to calm down. Ruby Navarro did not have that kind of time. Ray had chosen danger for her. Now I had to make that choice worth surviving. So I walked through the hospital doors. Ray met me in the hallway outside Ruby's room. He looked 10 years older than he had at the food stall. Clara Navarro stood behind him with both hands pressed to her mouth, eyes red, body too still in the way people get when panic has nowhere left to go. Ray did not ask if I had brought help. He looked at my face and knew I had brought something worse. Inside the room, Ruby lay under a thin blanket with skin almost the same color as the pillow. Her eyes were closed. The monitor beside her kept making small, sharp sounds that made Clara flinch every time. A doctor stood near the bed speaking softly to a nurse. "Dr. Priya Nair," according to the badge on her coat. She saw Ray step in with me and frowned. "Mr. Navarro, only family should be in here right now." Ray's voice came out raw. "He is the reason we had another week." "That does not make him family," Dr. Priya Nair said. I looked at Ruby. "No," I said. "It makes this simple." Clara lowered her hands. "Who are you?" "The man who bought the cup," I said. "And the man who may have one ugly chance." Ray grabbed my sleeve. "May?" I let him hold on. Desperate fathers needed something to grip. "No promise," I said. "No procedure, no miracle speech. I have a resource that repairs damaged vitality. It is not from your hospital. It is not approved by anyone wearing a badge. You and Clara choose. If you say no, I leave, and nobody in this room owes me anything." Dr. Priya Nair stepped toward me. "You cannot give a child unknown medication." I looked at the doctor long enough for her to stop walking. "I am not here to argue with the system that is already losing her," I said. "I am here to ask her parents before it finishes." The monitor screamed again before she could answer. That line hit the room harder than shouting. Clara crossed to the bed and took Ruby's hand. Ruby's fingers barely moved. "Ray," Clara whispered. Ray looked at the monitor, then at me, then at his daughter. "I choose the ugly chance," Ray said. Clara nodded once, tears slipping down her face without sound. "Save her if you can." Ray stepped to the door and locked it. Priya Nair heard the click and went rigid. "Mr. Navarro." Ray did not look away from Ruby. "If he hurts her, I open the door and scream. If he saves her, you did not see anything that gets my daughter turned into a lab report." That was not loyalty to me. That was a father choosing the only monster in the room who had paid before asking. I pulled the refined core blood from the pocket vault behind my jacket, so the doctor saw a bottle appear where there had been none. That was not ideal. Dr. Priya Nair saw it. Her face changed. Smart doctors recognize impossible before they name it. I broke the black wax with my thumb and let one drop touch my skin first. True sight stayed clean, no rot, no backlash warning. The blood crown altar had made this for repair, not violence. I lifted Ruby's head gently and tipped the bottle to her lips. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then Ruby coughed. Clara made a sound like her own heart had tripped. Ruby swallowed once. The refined core blood spread through her throat in a red-gold thread, so faint a normal eye might have missed it. Her gray skin warmed. The dark bruising under her eyes lightened. The monitor stopped screaming and began to settle into a rhythm that did not sound like surrender. Dr. Priya Nair stepped to the bed before she could stop herself. "What did you give her?" the doctor asked. "Something you did not see," I said. "I saw enough." "Then understand enough." Ruby's fingers curled around Clara's hand. Clara broke first. She bent over the bed and sobbed into the blanket. Ray did not cry right away. He watched the monitor as if it might betray him if he blinked. Then Ruby opened her eyes. Her voice was tiny, rough, and annoyed at the world. "Mom," Ruby whispered, "I'm hungry." Ray hit his knees beside the bed. Not the monitor, not the doctor, not the label in true sight. A dying child asked for food, and death had to step back from the bed like it had been caught trespassing. Priya Nair touched Ruby's wrist, checked her eyes, looked at the monitor again, and then looked at me with fear tucked behind professional training. "If anyone asks," I said, "she stabilized before you entered the room." The doctor's mouth tightened. "That is not how records work." "Then write the shortest record of your career." Ray stood. He wiped his face with both hands and turned to me. The desperation was still there, but something had changed under it. He was not bargaining for one more day anymore. He was choosing what to become after receiving it. "I go wherever you point," Ray said. "No," I said. "You choose. Debt makes cowards. Choice makes useful men." Ray looked at Ruby, then at Clara. Clara held Ruby's hand and nodded at him once. Ray turned back to me. "Then I choose. Nightfall gets no more children from this city if I can help it." Good. Now loyalty had a spine. My phone buzzed with a message from Ray's burner even though he was standing in front of me. He looked down at his own screen and went pale again. "They moved my e-stock warehouse entry time," Ray said. "They want me there tonight. They think Ruby's crash will make me obedient." "Let them keep thinking." Dr. Priya Nair stepped between us and the door. "If you are bringing danger here, leave." That was a fair request. I looked at Ruby, awake and whispering something about pancakes to Clara. "We are leaving," I said. Outside the room, Ray gave me the e-stock warehouse entry details he had, which was not much: loading doors, guards, captive offerers, a blood altar, and Mara's people preparing a bigger sacrifice after the gray rain started. Not enough for a meeting. Enough for a raid. But before nightfall, another pull caught my wrist. The rot mark warmed, the last fourth act stub in my pocket vault fluttered against nothing, and on the hospital lobby screen, a public emergency clip showed Old Monarch Theater with its doors open, lights burning on a stage nobody had powered. 3 altar shapes stood under red curtains while a caption begged citizens to stay away from role-based anomaly activity. Thanksgiving week, an empty theater, 3 roles waiting. My father's calendar had burned into Fate Watch because Daniel Keaton tried to hold dates together after grief had already cut holes in them. My mother Angela had lived her life stitching other people back together until she came home in a box. The holiday coming at us was built around reunion, and I had 2 dead parents, 1 rescued child, and a city full of monsters pretending they owned the stage. I should have walked straight to East Dock Warehouse. Instead, TrueSight gave me a colder line over the lobby screen. Missing role prevents final judgment. Compatible wound detected. Old Monarch Theater was not a detour. It was a weapon waiting to decide if I was allowed to carry it. I went alone. The theater smelled like dust, wet velvet, and old applause. No crowd waited outside. People were learning. Role-based anomalies sounded harmless until the role started casting humans as props. 3 altars stood on the stage. 1 wore a cracked heroic mask. 1 wore a mourning veil. 1 wore a painted grin wide enough to swallow a child. The 4th space at center stage was empty. TrueSight opened across the footlights. Required missing role, read judge. Function, pronounce verdict over false grief, borrowed authority, and performed suffering. Offering demand, blood mark made by one who has lost family without selling the wound. The jester altar moved first, its painted grin tilted toward me. A voice came from the empty theater, bright and cruel. No judge, just a thief in work boots. The heroic mask altar laughed in a low male voice. The veiled altar whispered something that sounded like prayer and accusation at the same time. I stepped onto the stage. The heroic mask altar threw a shadow of Daniel Keaton across the curtain, younger than I remembered him, one hand on a calendar that kept bleeding dates onto the floor. The veiled altar answered with Angela Keaton's hospital coat, empty at the shoulders, sleeves hanging like someone had walked out of life and left the work behind. The jester clapped with painted hands. Look! Props! Dead parents make such easy paint! My grip tightened on the soul dagger. That was the trap. Rage would make me a grieving son. Grief would make me a begging child. Neither was the missing role. A judge had to stand there and name the lie without letting it own the courtroom. The boards creaked under my shoes. The jester altar spoke again, and this time the whole theater heard it even though I was alone. What have you judged, Miles Keaton? A woman who left you? A few thugs? A tree with bad manners? It used my name. I did not like that. I liked less that the jester was not wrong enough to ignore. The heroic mask altar flared. A shadow figure raised a sword and pointed it at me. A judge must stand above the story. The veiled altar lowered its head. A judge must suffer beneath it. The jester giggled. You are neither. You are a hungry little man stealing costumes. The red judge space remained empty. I pulled the soul dagger and cut my palm. Blood ran down my wrist, bright against the rot mark. I am hungry, I said. That part is true. The jester's grin widened. I dragged my bleeding fingers across my face, from brow to cheek, then across the other side, making a rough red mask over skin instead of paint. But I did not sell my dead, I said. I did not sell Ruby. I did not sell Ray. I did not sell myself back to Lydia for cash in a plaza. The theater lights turned red one by one. I stepped into the empty 4th space. I judge fake authority because I have had enough of people renting it. Money, badges, syndicate marks, pretty tears, borrowed blood mist. If a role wants verdict, here it is. The jester altar snapped, fake. I looked at the painted grin. Guilty. The word hit the stage like a dropped blade. The jester altar cracked. Its painted grin split down the center, and the laugh inside turned into a choke. The heroic mask altar bowed. The veiled altar lifted its head. The empty 4th space filled with red light around my blood-marked face. TrueSight burned clean. Red judge recognized. 3 legendary role items appeared in a row. A black sleeve cord, a cracked bronze handbell, and a strip of red stage cloth that moved like it was breathing. I did not waste time reading every line. Each carried a role function, a fear effect, and a set connection. Then the center altar opened. A mask rose from it. Red lacquer, black judgment lines, a mouth shaped neither smiling nor kind. Red judge mask, grade, mythic. Function, imposes fear authority over false roles, borrowed courage, and staged obedience. Strength increases when worn during judgment of predators. Limit, breaks fake courage first. Real conviction still has teeth. Set promise, incomplete. I took the mask. The black sleeve cord wrapped around my wrist and then settled into the pocket vault. The bronze bell rang once without my hand touching it, and every rotten seat in the theater faced the stage like an audience waiting for punishment. The red cloth slid behind the mask and vanished into its set connection. 3 pieces, 1 mask, 1 job. Make false authority afraid before it finished its speech. The jester altar, broken and still proud, forced out one last line. Final rehearsal tonight. Theater of Sorrows does not forget its judge. The words sank into the red judge mask and then into the rot mark, where they burned beside the child of rot's attention, like 2 unpaid debts arguing over my body. I had taken what I came for. I stored the role items and mask in the pocket vault, wiped blood from one eye and left Old Monarch Theater before Pharaoh or thrill seekers got brave. Ruby was awake and alive. Ray had chosen loyalty. The red judge mask had chosen me. Then Ray called from inside East Dock Warehouse. His whisper was so low I could barely hear it over the rain beginning outside the theater doors. Before I replied, I held the still water cup under the cracked lobby awning until gray rain filled the porcelain again. East Dock deserved bad weather in a cup. They have captives, Miles, not just offerers. Human slots in cages. Mara is here, Lydia too. Troy just arrived. They are feeding people to a blood altar when gray rain starts. I looked at the street. Gray rain fell in silver sheets under the theater marquee. I opened a black umbrella from the lost and found rack, not because I needed it, because villains loved symbols, and I was tired of letting them have all the props. Stay small, I told Ray. I am coming through the front door. I walked into East Dock Warehouse under a black umbrella while gray rain turned Nightfall's borrowed power into wet jewelry. The front guard saw the umbrella first. Then the red judge mask. Their black bands looked sharp under the warehouse lights. Their eyes did not. One of them whispered, "That is the man from the red and black lights." Useful. Fear had arrived before I did. The mask did not make me taller. It made liars remember they were acting. One guard lifted a stun rod. The charm wrapped around his wrist sparked, caught gray rain under the loading awning, and died. The second guard reached for a radio. I broke the radio with the umbrella handle and kicked him through the door. Inside, East Dock Warehouse smelled like rust, old cargo and frightened people. Cages lined the walls. Human slots, not a metaphor this time. Nightfall had made the insult physical, numbered, locked, and profitable. Men and women crouched behind chain-link panels with altar marks on their arms, hospital bracelets on some wrists, debt papers taped above a few cages, and Nightfall tags hanging from the locks like price labels. Nightfall had found a way to make desperation stackable. At the center of the warehouse, a blood altar pulsed under hanging work lights. It was larger than any public altar I had seen, not permanent like the Blood Crown altar, not stable like a true system. It was a greedy imitation built from altar fragments, stolen charms, broken offerings, and bowls of human blood. Mara Sable stood beside it in a dark coat. Lydia Wren stood near her, pale, bandaged, and wearing a green luck charm at her throat like a borrowed heartbeat. Troy Bancroft stood behind Lydia, close enough to claim her if she won, far enough to deny her if she lost. His black Maybach waited inside the warehouse by the open bay door. Of course it did. Some men needed a status object even at a human sacrifice. Ray Navarro knelt near the altar with a crate of failed rewards in front of him and a guard's blade at his neck. He saw me and did not smile. Good. Smiling would have gotten him killed. Mara looked up when the first guard's body hit the floor. Her eyes found the mask, then my hands, then the gray rain dripping from the umbrella edge. "Miles Keaton," Mara said, clear enough for everyone in the warehouse. "You wore a costume." I closed the umbrella. "No," I said, "I brought a verdict." Lydia flinched at my voice. Troy did not. Troy still believed money could interrupt weather. He stepped forward with both hands raised, polished and useless. "Wait, whatever this is, I can pay. I was not part of the cages. I can transfer money, property, vehicles. Name a number and leave me out of it." The captives heard him. So did Lydia. That mattered. I looked at the Maybach. "You brought your receipt." Troy's mouth opened. The egg cracked inside the pocket vault. The pulse hit so hard my knees almost bent. The blood altar responded too. Red light rolled across the warehouse floor, crawling toward the pocket vault like the stolen ritual wanted to feed my egg or be eaten by it. The Abyss Drake egg had taken Hot Chip Mythic Birth, Calamity Blood, Wish Avatar traits, Blood Moon residue, Briar Hollow farm rot, and every ugly meal I could afford. Now it smelled a warehouse monster being born out of fear. The egg decided it was done waiting. It burst from the pocket vault in a shell of black fire. Every head turned. Even Mara stopped smiling. The egg hit the floor in front of the blood altar and split open from top to bottom. A small drake climbed out, black-scaled, red-veined, winged, and furious at the world for being late with dinner. Her tail ended in a sharp heart-shaped barb glowing pink-red under the black shell. Her eyes found me first, then the altar, then Troy's Maybach. True Sight flashed one clean line. Vesper, bonded Abyss Drake, Protector hatchling, mythic growth state active, not romance, not decoration, a living disaster with opinions. Troy whispered, "What is that?" Vesper answered by leaping past him. The blood altar screamed as the monster inside it tried to form. It rose halfway, all red limbs and stolen faces, before Vesper hit it in the chest. For one ugly second, the altar hit back. Red cords snapped around Vesper's wings and tried to drink her before she finished being born. She shrieked, furious, not afraid. I cut one cord with the soul dagger and shouted, "Eat the altar, not the people!" Vesper tore free, dragged the half-born creature across the floor, and slammed it through the side of Troy's Maybach. Glass exploded, metal folded. Troy made a sound no rich man should make in public. The monster died under the car before it finished being born, but Vesper's wings smoked where the blood cords had touched her. Vesper stood on the crushed hood, jaws dripping red light, and gave one sharp cry that made every Nightfall guard take a step back. Years of poverty had not given me a luxury car. One bag of hot chips had given me something that ate luxury cars by accident. Lydia stared at Vesper, then at me. The old plaza came back in her eyes. Hot chips, red beam, her smile dying under public light. She understood, finally, that she had not traded up when she climbed into Troy's Maybach. She had climbed into a target. Mara moved first. She sliced her palm and threw blood toward the altar's broken base. "Feed the slots!" The cages lit red. Every captive's mark began to burn. That was the line she crossed in front of everyone. Mara was not escaping yet. She was trying to cache the prisoners before losing the warehouse. I pulled the soul dagger. "Guilty," I said through the red judge mask. The mask amplified the word across the warehouse. Nightfall guards with weak courage charms stumbled. 2 dropped their blades, 1 fell to his knees and vomited. Borrowed obedience cracked under the mask like cheap paint. I crossed the floor. A guard swung a hooked chain at Ray's neck. Fate Watch showed the arc. I cut the chain, grabbed Ray by the collar, and threw him behind a cargo pallet. "Keys," I said. Ray tossed me a ring from his sleeve. Chosen loyalty had good hands. I threw the keys into the nearest cage. A woman inside caught them and started unlocking people before anyone told her to be brave. Mara's blood mist burst around her. Not toward me, toward the side bay. The same trick that had saved her in West Rail District and saved Lydia in the loading yard. This time, gray rain was already falling through the open bay door. This time, the Stillwater cup was full. I pulled the cup from the pocket vault and splashed its stored rain into the blood mist. Mara screamed. The mist collapsed into flesh halfway across the floor. She hit the concrete on one knee, one arm solid, one shoulder still trying to be fog. The rain burned through the escape art and left her gasping like a fish on a dock. One splash, not forever. I kicked her knife away. "You are weather dependent," I said. "That is embarrassing for a commander." She lunged anyway. Predators are educational that way. The soul dagger opened her coat, pinned her shadow, and stopped 1 inch from her throat. Vesper snarled from the Maybach hood. Ray dragged a captive away from the burning marks. The freedwoman kept unlocking cages. Troy crawled behind the crushed car, leaving Lydia standing alone in a rain of glass. Mara looked at the cages, then at the altar. Even beaten, she smiled. "You think freeing them matters?" Mara said. "Nightfall has more warehouses." "Then I need a map." I pulled the blood oath worm tube from the pocket vault. The pale child worm twisted toward Mara's open wound. The mother worm stayed inside the nest heart, sealed to me through blood and will. I had not used the pair on a thief, a coward, or a desperate man. Mara had smiled while human slots burned. That earned the leash. Her eyes widened when she saw the tube. "No," Mara said. "That was the best consent a predator ever gave." I drove the child worm into the wound under her collarbone. Mara's body arched. The warehouse lights flickered. The worm vanished under her skin, and a black-red line curled around her throat like a collar drawn from inside the body. She tried to form blood mist again. The line tightened. Mara hit the floor and screamed into the concrete. True sight confirmed the bind. Blood oath worm. Child host established. Command pressure active. Tracking active. Betrayal response armed. Mara Sable, Nightfall local commander and blood mist escape user, had become a living key instead of a locked door. The worm could force doors open. It could not force Mara to make the safe door obvious. Lydia saw it happen. That broke the last borrowed pride in her face. She ripped at the green luck charm on her throat like she could hide it before I looked. Too late. TrueSight had already labeled it as unstable borrowed fortune tied through Mara's mark. I crossed to Lydia. She backed away until her spine hit the crushed Maybach. "Miles," she said, and this time my name had no perfume left on it. "Please!" Troy crawled out from behind the car and pointed at her. "She brought me here. She said he was weak. She said Nightfall would handle him. I do not know her like that." The captives heard him abandon her. One of them, a man with blood on his mouth, spat at Lydia's broken shoe. Crown Mall Plaza laughter. Foot kiss demand. Ambush pride. Final collapse. Lydia looked at Troy as if betrayal was unfair when it happened in her direction. I tore the luck charm from her throat. She reached for it. I caught her wrist. No, I said. You are done renting miracles. I put the charm into the pocket vault for the Blood Crown Altar's teeth later. Then I shoved Lydia away from the car and toward the freed captives. Nobody moved to protect her. Troy listed his black card with shaking fingers. I can still pay! Vesper hopped down from the Maybach hood. The card caught fire before she touched it. Troy dropped it and ran 3 steps. A warehouse guard he had ignored earlier shoved him back into the open. Fake wealth had reached the refund counter. FARO arrived after the stronghold had already lost. They came to a finished fight, not a rescue. Director Isaac Penn came through the side entrance with Agent Flint behind him, and a line of armed responders spread across the doorway. Flint saw me, saw the red judge mask in my hand, saw Vesper standing on the crushed Maybach, and did not raise his weapon all the way. Smart man. Director Isaac Penn did raise his. Then he saw the cages, the freed captives, Ray Navarro carrying a bleeding woman toward the bay door, Lydia on the floor. Mara bound and shaking, Troy trying to hide behind a car Vesper had already made worthless. Penn lowered his weapon first, the rest of Pharaoh followed slower. Keaton, Director Isaac Penn said, you are standing in the middle of a federal disaster scene. I fixed it. You also destroyed evidence. I looked at the blood altar Vesper had torn open. It was biting people. Vesper chirped once from the Maybach hood, pleased with herself. Penn's eyes shifted to her and back to me. Then to the cages. Then to the broken altars still leaking red light. Whatever speech he had brought died right there. Good. Some authority collapses should be visible. Director Isaac Penn pulled a white card from his vest and held it out between 2 fingers. Civilian disaster contract. Temporary. You answer, declared altar threats in Fair Lake City. We do not try to arrest you tonight. You stay locatable. You do not feed civilians to your dragon. Vesper hissed at him. She is picky, I said. Penn did not laugh. Neither did I. The contract was not trust. It was fear-wearing paperwork. That was fine. Fear had carried worse deals. I took the card. Agent Flint's camera hung against his chest. The lens was cracked, but he kept one hand over it like I might eat the footage if he blinked. I pointed at him. Next time you throw that sensor disc, throw 2. Flint swallowed. Noted. Penn heard the exchange and understood the important part. His tracker had escaped me once because I had allowed the bigger problem to live for later. That did not make Pharaoh safe. It made Pharaoh scheduled. Do not mistake this for obedience, I said. Do not mistake it for friendship, Penn answered. Fair enough. Mara laughed from the floor, weak and poisonous. The blood oath line around her throat tightened, but she forced the words out anyway. Ask him why Nightfall knew the Keaton names before you did, she said. The warehouse went still. I turned toward her. Mara smiled through blood. Daniel Keaton, Angela Keaton, old channel, old payment. Your parents were not the first bodies buried by people with clean badges and dirty hands. Director Isaac Penn's jaw locked. He did not deny it fast enough. That was not the truth, not all of it, but it was a direction, and directions were how predators became prey. The red judge mask warmed in my hand. The rot mark on my wrist tightened. Somewhere beyond the rain, the theater of sorrow still wanted its judge, and the child of rot had already noticed the mortal who stole a farm from its roots. Lydia was cuffed by Pharaoh alive because Penn wanted bait and I wanted her watching the rest of her borrowed world rot. Troy was dragged out beside her, screaming about legal teams nobody respected anymore. Mara stayed on the floor until I gave the first command through the worm and made her open the hidden Nightfall lockboxes beneath East Dock Warehouse. Ray stood beside me when the first captive walked into the gray rain free. He did not thank me. He looked at Ruby's photo on his phone, then at the cages, then at the warehouse deed folder Mara had tried to burn. Northcutt has a second mouth now, Ray said. I almost smiled. East Dock Warehouse was no longer Nightfall's fortress. It was inventory. Before sunrise, I took Lydia's green luck charm back to Northcutt Meats and dropped it into the Blood Crown altar. The charm flashed once, trying to pretend it still had a favored owner. The altar's red teeth chewed through it anyway. Half a bottle of core blood rose from the stone, bitter and dark. Lydia's borrowed miracle became my fuel, which was exactly the level of romance she deserved. By dawn, Lydia had lost Troy, Nightfall protection, her luck charm, and the right to call me a loser in any room that mattered. Troy had lost his Maybach, his black card, and every witness who used to confuse money for courage. Mara had lost her escape, her autonomy, and the safety of being useful only to herself. Nightfall did not lose every hole it owned. Not yet. It lost East Dock, its local commander, its easy cages, and the right to move through Fair Lake quietly. I kept Northcutt Meats. I took East Dock Warehouse. I had Vesper, the Maybach's corpse as her first trophy, the Red Judge mask in my hand, a government contract in my pocket, and a bound commander who knew where the wider syndicate kept its doors. Gold and diamonds still meant something in the old world. In mine, trash became blood, fear became steel, grief became judgment, and the cheap hot chip egg finally opened its eyes.